Thank you for joining us. This is the Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Department's regular meeting, November 18th, 2021. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our chair, Carl Whitehead, could not be with us this evening. If I could get a roll call, Peter.
Here.
Ahmad.
I think it's actually Chris. Could you mute your laptop?
Here, Ahmed is here.
Bob.
Here.
Ben. He is not here today, right? Joan. Here. And Rocco.
Here.
Tonight's meeting has been convened in accordance with Chapter 417 of the laws of 2021, which suspends certain provisions of the open meetings law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. And according with the law, the public has been provided with the ability to view and participate in tonight's meeting by computer, smartphone, or telephone, and to view the meeting on the usual cable television channels. The recording of the meeting will be posted to the town website, and a written transcript of the meeting will be prepared and provided at a later date. There has been a roll call of the board members, and there's a quorum present for this evening. I have also confirmed with the secretary that this meeting has been duly noted. We have fulfilled our legal notice requirements by posting a copy of the notice of the meeting on the town's webpage and the town's bulletin board. We have emailed a copy of the notice to the media, and we have confirmation that the legal notices for the public hearings have been properly published. All right, first up is Dunkin Donuts.
Chris, could you check if that microphone is on? Just because the other one is not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Good evening. This is Chairman, members of the board. My name is Christopher Lapine with the Chazen Companies.
Dave Pennell with Southpaw Dunkin franchisee.
And Cynthia Falls from GK&A Architecture.
Cynthia, I think the one in front of you is actually working, just so FYI. Okay.
Test.
Yeah. Okay.
So we know we still have the public hearing for this project open, but we thought what we might do is first kind of walk through the modifications we made to the site plan and to the architectural elevations, and also the additional queuing study that was requested of us. So working through the site plan modifications. If you recall, at our last meeting, there was a concern about tractor trailer access through the site that currently exists today, and how part of that tractor trailer maneuvering utilizes parking spaces that are dedicated to the Rite Aid pharmacy. What we did here was we made some modifications to the curb cut here near their refuse enclosure. We also made some modifications.
Chris, did you want to share your screen?
Oh, I'm not sure.
No.
I thought I did. Bet you that'd be important. How's that?
It looks good.
All right. I'll be nice enough to go over those modifications again. So as we said, the biggest concern at our last planning board meeting related to this project related to the tractor trailer access, not only circulating around the site, but egressing the site. So I'd like to demonstrate to you what we've done here. We've eliminated the parking space that was located right here, kind of at the directly, the first one north to the northeast of the Rite Aid. That allowed the sweeping turn of the tractor trailer, so it no longer goes within the parking aisle of the car that was there. As we come around the property here, we now have the ability to turn the truck with this additional painted striping area here. And that goes into that lane that's between the drive-through and what was the existing curb there. We cut the curb back a few feet so that it would open it up to allow the truck to go parallel to the curb. As this truck turns around, as we demonstrated last month, there were a few spit parking spaces that were here. We've since removed those, and the truck can now circulate to the rear of the Rite Aid facility. There are, as we indicated, there are loading docks at the Rite Aid that are being utilized by the tractor trailers. As that trailer progresses to the south, there was a concern last month about this particular area and how close it was because of almost the neck down to the corner of the existing building here. We shifted the loading area to the southeast so that it no longer creates that bit of a throat right here, and it's kind of, it opened it up a little bit more in terms of it's about 25 feet of access now. As discussed, this is a one-way that's going around. I think we may have not have shown that with our directional arrows on the plan, but the intent is to make this tractor trailer access one way. The trucks would then come out, as we indicated, parallel to the Dunkin Donuts facility. We've worked with the county DPW in terms of developing a new radius for each of these curbs. The concern being, as a truck was turning southbound, it was going into the opposing lane. As demonstrated on our truck turning movement plans that we've submitted, the new radius allows for it to turn within its southbound lane without encroaching oncoming traffic. As we're in this part of the egress location, you also asked us if we could reduce the width of the point of egress from the drive-through facility. We came to you and it was 18 feet in width last month. We've necked that down to the 12 feet that was requested on that plan. In terms of the parking area to the northeast, northwest corner of the site, we've gone through and we showed how it would function in a one-way scenario. Because of the concern raised about the existing aisle lists. As you recall, this was part of a 1996 site plan approval, which did allow two-way traffic in there. But to alleviate the concerns of your traffic engineer, we've created this all as one way. We have a series of do not enter and one-way signs throughout so that cars can circulate, and this would be the point of egress here beneath the refuse enclosure. With regards to, we were asked to look at some additional landscaping on the western end of our site. There is a very limited area that exists right now in terms of the green space, but we did try to incorporate some additional screening for the drive-through as requested. We also pulled back some of our landscaping that was along the front of the property to accommodate some site distance concerns that were also raised by the town engineer. There was also a concern about providing for ADA accessible access from the Dunkin Donuts facility to the main building. We've shown that here. What we did was we extended the sidewalk along the northwestern portion of the building. And we have a crosswalk to another island where we added another sidewalk, and then we have a crosswalk that provides you right to the main building access. We thought this was the best endeavor because it didn't involve individuals crossing the drive-through as well as the two opposing lanes of traffic. Those were a bulk of the kind of surface comments that were made. There were some comments related to stormwater facilities, which we addressed in terms of relocating some dry wells. We added some additional spot elevations to further clarify the grading intent of our plans. And we've also distributed as part of our last submittal to the town a copy of our subsurface sewage disposal design for the new septic system. With that, we provided an updated set of architectural elevations and information related to queuing. But I think I'll allow Cynthia to kind of review the modifications that were done for the architecture for the back of the board.
At the last meeting, there was some concern that the building did not work well with the rest of this shopping center. So as part of our modifications, we have changed the stone to match the stone that's near the base of the shopping center. And we have also added a mansard similar to the shopping center. The only other concerns we had to do with signage. We had some decals of some graphics along the drive-through side, which we have removed. And we had a comment that we did not submit to zoning for variances that are needed for the signage on the parking lot side and on the drive-through side. Your regulation does not allow for any signage on facing a parking lot, even though there was some existing non-conforming, and obviously we would need that. And along the south side of the building on the drive-through, we wanted to place the DD signage because we will not have any freestanding sign indicating that we are there. We have sent in our application, and will probably be heard next month. Any questions?
I have one question. Is there any HVAC on top of the building, and do you have that to screen?
Yes, the mansard that you see on all sides of the building does not exist. Right now, there is no parapet, or it's just a small parapet, and you can see the air conditioning. The whole purpose of the mansard is that the air conditioning will be behind it. It's just a false mansard there. It's not a roof.
Thank you.
If I can add one other thing I forgot to
Sure.
review with you in terms of the site plan revisions. We were asked to also take a look at the plans as it related to the 1996 approval and where the landscaping was lacking. What we were able to identify was in the rear of the site. The eastern white pines that were proposed back then have not been installed. And we've identified them to be installed. There was 4 of them on the site plan. Also appears to be a dogwood tree that at some point had been removed because it looks like there's evidence of a trunk out there. We've incorporated that back into the plan as well. All the landscaping that surrounded the refuse enclosure as it exists today is still in conformance with the 1996 plan. The other evergreen trees that were contemplated in the rear of the facility were planted then. So we just want to make a note of that for the board's record.
Eric?
The plan is before the board for seeker review, and if the board arrives at a seeker determination, which we think it is ready for, then after that, the board could consider site plan and special use permit approval, and then architectural review. Our comments are there. I guess of them, the ones are to point out would be one regarding the rear of the building. The applicant proposed to coordinate the trash back there on gravel. We suggested some kind of a barrier to define that area better. That would be, we believe that can be handled as a condition of approval. There were some comments that from the last meeting that the applicant didn't respond to in our comment number 6. I don't think that they're critical to approval at this time, but you may want to follow up with the applicant about that. There is number 6 if you want to follow up. As far as the traffic and discussion with the consultant, who will speak in a minute, the traffic issues seem to be resolved for seeker. And we prepared a draft negative declaration for your consideration tonight. The remaining discussion was about a future study, which didn't appear warranted by seeker review because the questions revolved around internal congestion. And given that last time the board thought that the consequences of a future study, there would be no action to take, we thought there's really not much point to the study. And that's our recommendation. Other than that, the comments are here on the architecture. They did make the changes you requested. I will note that the plan does actually include a freestanding sign proposal at the entrance to the site towards the north end in that vicinity, which is detailed in the plans. It's just a sign face. There is no apparent base to it. And so you may want to discuss with the applicant some kind of a setting for that sign to appear for the structure, not for the sign itself. Quantity and size are up to the permit and the zoning board if there's variances, but the appearance of it, you may want to discuss further. Those are our comments.
Thank you. Mark, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Good evening. My name is Mark Pacharo from JMC. I'm the town's traffic consultant, and I reviewed the application that was submitted in October. So the comments that we had were acceptable of the aisle widths on the northwest parking area being less than the town's requirement of 26 feet due to the original site plan approval on the property. However, we do ask that the applicant consider revising the center drive aisle to have a consistent one-way northerly flow is probably what's preferable from the applicant's perspective. We would not like to see the converging one ways in the center drive aisle in the northwestern parking area. And then with that, add the additional one-way do not enter signage to incorporate that one-way flow. We did review the site distance analysis that the applicant had provided in the letter. We just asked that the applicant add a note to their site drawing saying that the site distance shall not be impeded by landscaping along the property's frontage. And that's really the summary of our comments on this project with this last submission.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Andy Learn with CPL, Town Consulting Engineer. We also reviewed the plan. Most of our comments have been addressed. We've got a few remaining comments to be taken care of. One of our comments has to do with the proposed improvements along the southerly boundary. We're looking for a note to be added to the plan about staking out that line by a licensed land surveyor to make sure that there's no encroachment as a result of those improvements. We also have a few questions about lighting. Just another comment to make sure that they're complying. The new lighting is complying with current codes, town standards. The remaining comments are fairly minor. Also looking for a sequence of construction, which the applicant has indicated they were waiting to get the plans in a more finished condition, which is acceptable, but we'll still need that. It could be considered as a condition of approval. And then we just want to make sure that they work with the water department to make sure that there's only 1 meter for this lot. There seems to be 2 connections running through the site. We just want to make sure that town requirements are met with respect to that only one meter per lot. And then otherwise, to me, it looks like it's ready for conditional approval.
Thanks, Andy. All right, why don't we go around the room? Peter?
Do you want to do the public hearing before or after?
We can do it now. Would you like me to do it now?
Yeah, let's do that first.
I move that we open to public hearing. I heard a second. Call the question.
Hi.
Aye.
Is there anyone that would like to speak on this?
Thanks, Lisa. Anyone in, on Zoom who would like to speak on the Dunkin' Donuts on Vassar Road? If you're on Zoom, actually, Chris, if you could stop sharing your screen for a minute and then make me easier for us to see everybody, just in case. But if you could indicate that you would like to by unmuting yourself or raising your hand on Zoom. Not seeing any.
Seeing none, I move that we close the public hearing. I heard a second. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0. Peter, do you have any questions on this?
Just a couple of things. One, the design's a big improvement. Thank you. I know it couldn't have been easy. Second question, it was one that I raised before, but I'm not sure if we have gotten an answer, and that is with regard to the internal traffic flow, to what extent, if any, was the relationship between this site and the Stewart's taken into consideration?
If, I believe at the last meeting, we were asked if we were able to identify an existing easement between both parcels. On our side, we were not able to identify.
Yeah, there is no, I mean, I looked at the deeds myself and there's no record of an easement between those parcels. That's really partially why I'm asking that question. Because if there should be a significant increase in flow from this site to the Stewart site, lacking an easement, I'm just thinking ahead. What is the potential there for the owners of the Stewart site to put a fence up, and to what degree would that affect the internal traffic flow?
I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't researched the original site plan approval associated with the Stewarts. We did look at the site plan approvals associated with this parcel here. I'm not sure if that connection was a condition of approval.
Yeah.
for the
Well,
Stewart.
let's make it, keep it simple.
Yeah.
It might not, it's really not, might not be relative at all. What is relative is, did you take that into consideration when you were looking at the internal traffic flow? In other words, that access and egress from Stewart's? And if you did, to what extent did it affect the outcome?
Our site was designed based on the two curb cuts that existed today. The entrance, the separated entrance and exit, that's the way the flow of the property works. And the additional curb cut to Stewart's is just a benefit to the property.
Okay.
Didn't come into
Just
consideration.
keep it simple.
Yeah.
So it wasn't considered. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Mark, maybe I'm sensing that part of Peter's question has to do with traffic.
Yep.
And could you, since you're most familiar, I think of everyone here, you may be the most familiar with the traffic analysis. Do you recall whether the traffic analysis dealt with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer Peter's question. So it was not considered in the traffic analysis. So all the traffic that was related to the Dunkin' was leaving the site egress driveway. It was not going through the Stewart's.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, do you have any questions?
No, a couple of comments, but I think that.
Rocco,
No, I think everything's been answered. Thank you.
Joan,
I don't. Thank you.
Ahmad, do you have any questions?
So I like the changes, and I think I don't have any other comments.
Okay, thank you. I just had a few. Need to make sure that your landscaping doesn't impede on any site distances. Your light fixtures, they have to be fully shielded. What about construction? Do we have any construction hours? Dates that possibly you would start construction, hours in which construction would be going on, that type of thing?
Based on, if we get an approval, we're looking to start this early next year.
Okay,
There's still like tenant inside the space today.
yeah,
which
the
we have to give them-
CPA, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's a temporary use of that building. So we have to give them notice, and at that time, we'll pursue the remainder of our building permits and probably start construction early next year.
Okay. All right, and let's see, was there anything else? You're awaiting health department approval for the septic system, right?
For the
Or did you
septic.
get it?
And we're waiting on the septic system approval, and we also submitted to the county DPW
Okay,
for the modified curb cut.
okay. Yeah, and I think, what Mark was saying also about that one-way flow, I think you might have to look at that, but again, that's something that could be conditional on approval. I think that's all I had.
Move that the planning board as lead agency hereby determines that the Dunkin Donuts Vassar Road special use permit and site plan would not have a significant adverse effect on the environment, and that no environmental impact statement will be required for the reasons set forth in the secret negative declaration for an unlisted action dated November 18th, 2021.
Second.
I heard a second. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
I move that the planning board grant conditional special use permit approval and conditional site plan approval, subject to the following: respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies. Said responses to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness, included but not limited to the following: items 1 through 12, 12 being comments made of the planning board meeting.
Second.
I heard a second. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We got to do
You're welcome.
architectural.
Yep, let's do architecture. All right, does anyone have any concerns about the architecture? No? Any questions? No? Okay. All right, I move that we approve architecture as,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Nicole. There's one
problem.
question that Eric had raised,
okay,
and that was about the sign and the setting for the sign.
Chris, could you, I think it was on the elevations, or not the elevation, it was internal to the site plan. It was on one of the detail pages. Landscape details and notes, C580.
While we're on this sheet, I just want to reference everybody to the bicycle rack that we added to the plan as well.
Sorry?
Here's the detail of the bicycle rack. I forgot to mention that we had it.
Oh.
That was requested last month.
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And
We'll
Carl's
make
asked.
sure Carl hears about it. It's the second
There
from
it
the
is.
last sheet
Okay.
in your packets.
He's got it.
Yeah, the intent of that was just to really give the patrons an idea of where the entryway is for the Dunkin' on the northbound site. But if I understand kind of what you're looking for, is you'd be looking for some, maybe to put this up on a little bit of a fieldstone border with some
Nothing, it doesn't
landscaping
have to be
surrounding.
elaborate, but something that would be consistent with the architecture of the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think some sort of fieldstone with some landscaping around it would certainly.
Yeah,
be
something
consistent.
that
That'd be great.
matches
Sure.
kind of what you have on there. That would be good.
condition. Yeah.
Sure. So
And where would that sign go exactly?
it would probably be towards the entrance of,
Because the only entrance is by the right aid.
The north-
Yeah, it's in the
Correct.
north end.
Yeah, the north end, right. Okay.
It's right here.
It's actually, I believe it's shown on the site plan just south of the north entrance. to the site.
Right here.
So the location is shown, but we can make the design that Chris suggested and you discussed, that we could just make that subject to staff review to make sure it works. No, I agree. That's good. Chris, just FYI, because it came up on another project recently, I think the sign has to be located 10 feet from the public right of way. So if you could dimension that, that would help.
okay, so again, we approve the architecture as shown and with the adding of the stone for the entrance sign for Dunkin Donuts
And some landscaping.
and some
Right.
landscaping as well.
Second.
Second.
Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too. All right, next up, we have McDonald's. 2585 South Road, seeker review, waterfront consistency review, site plan review, and architectural review.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman and members of the Poughkeepsie Planning Board. My name is Keith Brown of Brown Altman DeLeo LLP, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. I'm here this evening on behalf of McDonald's Corp. With their application for site development approval regarding the proposed new McDonald's restaurant located at 2585 South Road in Poughkeepsie, New York. We were last in front of the board on September 23rd, and I believe you are all familiar with the shopping center, the Hudson Plaza Shopping Center located on South Road in town. So since the last hearing, we've modified the site plans in several fashions. I'd like to point out that the plan that's before the board currently tonight is code compliant, but for parking and signage variances that would be necessary in connection with the new restaurant. As such, the new site plans were modified to add signage for pedestrian crossings. We reconfigured some of the crosswalks, particularly at the southern entrance drive aisle, as well as crossings at the ADA spaces, and striping for the drive-through lane was shortened and meets up with the drive-through lane itself. We added bollards at the dumpster, and the dumpster enclosure was moved back approximately 5 feet. And the loading area was extended west and made larger. I believe the big issue last time when we met was regarding spinning the building 90 degrees. We've examined that very closely. We believe that the current design is superior, specifically compared to the Wendy's and the Dunkin that we talked about. The Wendy's located on South Road. There, the drive-through faces the road and is visible for motorists on Route 9, as well as the Dunkin, the former Carl's Jr., the drive-through faces Neptune Road. And with this current design, the drive-through faces the rear of the shopping center. In more detail, we're going to have Alex Lomé and Bill Weisgerber talk about the decision to leave the orientation of the building the way it is, and the reasons behind that. So with me tonight, I have Mr. Alex Lomé of Bowler Engineering. He's our civil engineer. You may recall there's a different gentleman from Bowler here last time with us. It's because Alex was on vacation. In addition, we have Ethan Chakosky from Atlantic Traffic and Design, our traffic engineer. And the representative from McDonald's is Mr. Bill Weisgerber, as I mentioned, who is a trained architect. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex to go into some more detail. Thank you. Alex?
Good evening, everyone. As Keith had mentioned, my name is Alex Lomé with Bowler Engineering. If I can, I would just like to bring up the site plan on the screen here. And it's a colorized version of the site plan that was submitted, just so we can more easily see the site plan. So I'll touch on the orientation of the building quickly first. I am aware that there was the request to rotate the building 90 degrees so that the drive-through queuing wouldn't be along the South Road side of the site. And just for orientation purposes, the north is to the right of the page here. So the east side of the building, east side of the site is where Route 9 and South Road is. So when looking at changing the orientation and rotating it 90 degrees to have the traditional storefront facing Route 9, there were a couple of items that came up. One would be if rotating the building 90 degrees and complying with the 100-foot front yard setback, we would be looking at losing the bypass lane circulating around the drive-through, which would then require traffic and patrons of the store. If they do not go into the drive-through and they miss the parking spaces, they would then have to circulate back onto the shopping center drive aisle to the west before entering back into the site. With a 90-degree rotation, there was also some additional pedestrian crosswalks that would have been required, and then that would just kind of increase different points of conflict for a pedestrian and a vehicle circulating the site. And another item of consideration was rotating the building 90 degrees. The exit for the drive-through lane would then be coming out towards South Road, and a vehicle would have to then circulate back around the building, two sides of the building again, to exit to the shopping center drive aisle. And with the current configuration, once you leave the drive-through, you can make a quick right and exit a little more immediately back into the shopping center. Those were the main considerations we looked at when we were looking at rotating the building 90 degrees. So I just wanted to kind of go through that with the board so that we could all have an idea of what the thought process was there and why we decided to maintain the orientation of the building and the site circulation as it has been previously. And then just to go through some of the changes that were made from the site plan, Keith had hit on a few of them. We did add some signage to the site for pedestrian crossing. So where we have pedestrian crossings throughout the site, we do have some signage to warn motorists that pedestrians are crossing. We also did separate the do not enter and stop signs. We had a couple of situations where they were back to back, and that can create a little bit of confusion when you see the back of a sign, behind a do not enter sign. So we separated those signs at the southeast corner of the site. There was one that we did not separate, which we will update the plan accordingly to separate with near the cross access with the vacant bank to the north. So that will be updated. The pedestrian crossing on the east side of the building was also shifted. It previously had been closer to the southeast corner and crossing kind of on an angle. We've modified that to be more centralized with the east side of the building and to connect to the right of way. You'll notice there's a kink in the sidewalk coming from the DOT's right of way. And that was done to meet ADA accessibility criteria and to give a little more length of this walkway so that we wouldn't have to have ramps with handrails and things like that to comply with ADA accessibility. The pedestrian route from Route 9 to the rest of the shopping center was also slightly modified. Instead of having pedestrians come to the west along the west side of the building and then crossing closer to the ingress egress from the shopping center on the south side of the site, they will be utilizing the loading zone for the ADA spaces, crossing in the drive aisle. We've striped out a parking space for pedestrians to cross through here on the south side of the site and then utilize the sidewalk along the south side of the site to get to the edge of the McDonald's leased parcel. We've added detectable warning surfaces to anywhere we have flush curves where there's going to be crossings. The electric vehicle charging station, it's a little bit hard to see on the colored version of the site plan, but the electric vehicle charging station was added near the standard space adjacent to the ADA space on the south side of the building. And that electric vehicle charging station, typically you can have one station that can service 2 parking spaces. So that's what's happening in this scenario. We did add a bollard near the trash enclosure. It's going to be at the edge of the trash enclosure in the striped out area next to the parking space here, and that would be to prevent a gate swinging beyond that bollard and then maybe hitting a car that would be parked there. Similarly, on the other side of the trash corral, you have the curb that acts as the barrier there, so the gate doesn't just swing beyond a 90-degree rotation. We annotated on the plan on the west side in this landscape area here, just an area for snow storage. We added a no parking sign to the loading zone to say no parking for loading and fire zone. And we also extended this loading zone here. And we wanted, the intent here was to match kind of the width of this facade, of the south facade of the vacant bank to the north of us, so that if something is happening, if there's an emergency at that bank and say that side of the building is on fire, a fire truck does have proper length here to kind of pull up and stage and be able to fight that fire. We updated the grease trap that was proposed to 2,000-gallon grease trap pursuant to the DEC's requirements there. And what you can't see on this plan, but we did make an update to the force main that's outside of the McDonald's lease parcel to provide 10-foot horizontal separation from the existing water main that's within the shopping center. That's going to be on the south side of the end of the retail strip to the west of us. Just a few other items, just because there were some comments I noted in the planner's letter that was dated on November 12th that I just wanted to make sure that I touched on. From trash circulation perspective, we have run the truck turn template for the trash truck. We could submit that to the board. I also have it. I can't present it if the board would like to see it. That we do show the trash truck circulating the site, pulling into the trash corral, backing up, and then exiting. There was a note about the non-angled space down here in the southeast corner of the site. And, considering changing that to be an angled space or maybe relocating it on site. This is not an unusual configuration when you have you can have a combination of angled and 90-degree parking spaces here. And a car parking here would be able to kind of back straight up. They might have to back up a little bit further than normal, but they would be able to back straight up and then turn and get back into the circulation lane here. And then relative to the 18-foot wide one-way drive aisles where we have angled parking throughout the site, that is sufficient for when you have one-way traffic and circulation with angled parking. It's industry standard to have 18 feet. It provides enough space for cars to safely back up and then exit back into the circulation lane. I've even seen less than 18 feet in some situations, but 18 feet is sufficient. And one other item that I think maybe it would be beneficial to hear from the board on was there was a question about relocating the parking spaces that are along South Road to maybe be on the north side of the site where the loading zone is now. We considered that. I think that would they would be serving the same purpose. You would just have the loading zone. They would swap spaces and the loading zone would kind of be along the east side of the site here along South Road. And some of the parking would be on the north. I don't think we'd probably lose some parking spaces just from a spacing perspective there. And then there would still be, a loading zone and asphalt in that location along Route 9 there. So I know that was another comment, so I just wanted to make sure that I touched on that. And I think from a site plan perspective, that's a majority of the changes from what was in front of this board a few months ago and based on what we had resubmitted.
Alex, if you could stop sharing your screen. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to the architecture.
Sure,
Oh,
I can share the architecture as well. And then I think Bill Weisgerber can maybe speak to that. So I'll pull that up and share that.
Bill, you want to take us through the changes in the architecture?
I can, Keith, thank you. And Alex, do you happen to have our rendering as well that we could perhaps share? I'd almost like to start with that. I think our consultant did a beautiful job with that rendering.
I agree.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill Weisgerber. I'm a construction project manager for McDonald's Corporation. And here to certainly answer any questions or speak to the proposed architectural design for this location. At the board's request, we did work with our national design team to come up with a architectural feature, a corner element in this case, to really emphasize what we call the corner of Main and Main. Our current building standard is really designed to place this corner of the building, even without a tower element, pointing towards an intersecting corner. In this case, it's Route 9 and the driveway entrance to the shopping center. And as you can see illustrated in this drawing, the two welcome signs and even the yellow underscore on that trellis, that accentuates where the two entrances to the restaurant are to serve parking as well as egress from the street to this corner feature. So I have to admit, I was pleasantly surprised by what the design team was able to pull together. This is a relatively new design element for the particular building style. It's actually, this is going to be the third restaurant constructed with this element, but has not yet been constructed. There's currently a site on Long Island that's proposed to get this similar feature, as well as a site out in California. Both are starting construction in April of 22. So Poughkeepsie as well would certainly be one of a select group of McDonald's to have this added architectural feature. We went a little further to provide some additional glazing along the facade that faces Route 9. This is just beyond the McDonald's word mark on that east facing side. That glass is not transparent, however, that is part of the rear storage area of the restaurant, so it would be a spandrel glass or simply an opaque glass. But we even add the architectural feature of the trellis above to mimic the design that is both on this side and on the drive-through side, has similar canopies over the doors. This illustration does still show that diagonal cross access, which Alex says has moved. We felt it was better to put the crosswalk near the sidewalk that leads directly to that east facing entrance and not have people congregate near the corner of the site. And then the door that's on the south side of the building would manage for the parking that's crossing from the south side of the site. Hey, Alex, if you want to go back to the two-dimensional, we can kind of walk around the building and look at the other facades.
That might be sufficient for now. I think I was really just
Okay.
hoping to give the board an idea of the changes that were made. And I know there's an abundance of information to get through. So,
That's fine.
okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. So the project, just for record keeping purposes, the project's on for seeker review. The planning board did circulate for lead agency intent on September 23rd or at the September 23rd meeting. To date, no objections have been received. The application is also under review for water consistency review, site plan review, and architectural review. At this point, the application would be on for a public hearing this evening. Staff is recommending that the planning board adjourn the public hearing and defer action with comments. As you just heard, a number of the comments have been addressed or are in the process of being addressed. I do want to hit on a few items. We do appreciate some of the changes that have been made, including the EV charging stations. We are looking for some more detail about that, just cleaning up like the title sheet, something related to our signature boxes. I do still think that some of the parking and the angle parking in the northeast corner of the site might actually warrant another or a closer look and consideration. You're already seeking a bit of a variance for parking from the ZBA. So I think, you know, if you're already seeking, I don't even want to get into it, but the number of parking spaces that you're seeking a variance for, but if you're adding one or two more, I don't know if that really makes a difference. Because there's practical planning on a plan sheet, and then there's practical planning and human error in the real world, and we all are aware of that. So just thinking through that as you think through your resubmission. I guess I would just point the board to comments 8, 9, and 10, and 11B in my staff report. These were items, and I know that Alex and Keith and Bill, they all sort of touched on a number of them, but that I thought that the planning board would want to discuss with the applicant. We're at a phase and in the review, this is only the second appearance before the planning board, but I think that it's starting to become a part of the review where the planning board wants to give clear direction whether or not they're okay with the design and layout of and the circulation of the site. That said, also looking at the architecture, as there were so many direct comments made about it at the previous meeting. Do you like the changes? Do you not like the changes? If you don't like the changes, what do you want to see done differently? Also, I don't know if the applicant has any further information about the connection to the South Road Crossings project at the north. I know based on written response to comments on October 25th, the applicant had indicated that they had contacted the Hudson Plaza property owner, and I'm just wondering for the board's edification if they've received an update regarding that. And I have a whole list here, hold on. I know the planning board was also interested in just some confirmation about the signage, which again, once we have further direction or clear direction about the architecture, you'll be required anyway by the ZBA to provide a comprehensive signage package. So not only signs on the building, a monument sign, if there's one proposed, I think there is one shown on the site plan, but also if there's going to be any pylon sign, you know, if there's an insert for the plaza, just understanding what all of that looks like. And then let's see. I think that's it for now. And then we also have Mark Charo on for traffic and circulation and parking, and then Andy, of course.
Thank you. Mark.
Yes, good evening. Mark Petro again from JMC. We did review the McDonald's application submission that was in October. They addressed many of our previous comments, but we still have some comments as it relates to traffic impact analysis and their site plans. As far as the traffic impact analysis, there's some levels of service and delays that we requested that are just missing from the current study. And there's some additional storage lengths that we requested for some of the other through movements on the studied intersections, as well as how a printout is shown in a table as far as the unsignalized intersection that was studied. And then moving on, there was an accident analysis that was completed. However, we asked that the accidents be considered prior to COVID, so anything after February 2020 not be considered. So the 3 years before that should be looked at. And then there was discussion of a summary of the accident reports by intersection, but it was not apparent in our package that we received. So it might have just slipped through the cracks and not gone into the submission. And then, yes, there was a parking analysis that was done for based on our comment previously, and we asked that the parking requirements be consistent with the site plans. There seems to be a little bit of discrepancy. And then in the shared parking analysis, it looks like the square footage that was considered in the shared parking analysis doesn't add up to the total shopping center square footage. So I would say just probably to look at that a little further. Maybe there's some missing square footage, or maybe if there's some other reason, I'm not sure. As far as our site plan comments, some of them were picked up and mentioned by Alex already, as in the double posting of the signs. And then we mentioned about the height of the ADA sign being a little higher than what's being depicted on the site plans. And then as Kristen had mentioned about the, well, actually, as Alex has mentioned about the pedestrian routing to the center, asking for input on that, where that stood, if had any update on that. And then there was the truck turning, which I guess there was one that was prepared, but was not included in our package as well, showing the air on an aerial. And we asked that the fire department just look into that dual purpose loading area fire zone. I'm not sure how, if they're okay with that, or what other concerns the department might have with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Andy?
Sure. We also performed a review. Some outstanding comments have to do with health department approval, DOT conceptual approvals. We're also looking for an engineer's report with respect to water and sewer usage, specifically flow rates, design of the on-site pump station, as well as how the additional flow is going to impact the existing pump station for the property. We'll need to have that information for our review prior to approval. We also have some kind of more generic comments, detailed comments that relate to the utility design that will need to be addressed. The SWIP that we reviewed previously was in pretty good shape. We still have some outstanding comments, but we did not get a SWIP for review of this round of submission. One other thing that will need to be addressed is that there does not, we will need a stormwater maintenance and access agreement for the property as part of the SWIP approval. That's it. That's all we have for now.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to any of those questions or things that they just brought up?
Sure. I have there's a few of them that I can go through, and then I think Bill can respond to some of the coordination items with the property owner. Relative to having a sign package for the zoning board, we understand that, yeah, if upon referral to the zoning board for the variance approval, mostly relative to the signs, we will submit a sign package for the town for review and go through the process with the zoning board. I do recall that the zoning board does like to see a few iterations of the signs for the buildings. They like to see what complies, they like to see what's proposed, and then some compromise in the middle. So that, along with details of the freestanding sign that we are proposing, the drive-through menu board signs, that will be that'll all go in front of the zoning board. The drive-through menu board signs, those details are in the site plan set, but that would all be included with what goes to the zoning board.
Just for clarification, Alex, the freestanding sign does require review by the planning board, like for the architecture and so on. So when you do come submit next time, include that detail with the architectural package or somewhere in the site plan.
And
Sure.
also, technically, you have to wait for the ZBA, for the planning board to make its seeker determination before the ZBA can act. But you may want to start the process with the ZBA sooner rather than later and put your plan package in case it's not just a one meeting approval. So that way you're not held up waiting for your sign approval.
Understood. And just for the freestanding sign, it is in our site plans on detail sheet C901. There's a graphical detail for the freestanding sign that is being proposed.
Alex, I think I think I might have misspoke, but I understand that there might be like a monument sign specific for McDonald's, but sometimes for these larger plazas, they have sign where you would pop in like your little logo or something. So
Yeah.
I was just hoping you could make sure to include that as part of your next submission, planning board. Yes.
Understood. Yeah, I think if the freestanding sign is approved through process with the zoning board, I would think that maybe they wouldn't have that insert, but that we can certainly coordinate on that. If the one is to be proposed, we'll get you a detail on that as well, for sure.
Thank you.
Let me see what else was in here. I'll let Ethan Shakowski of Atlantic Traffic just comment on any of the traffic items. Relative to the height for the ADA sign being slightly higher, that's no issue. We can certainly update that. And the truck turning template on the aerial, Mark, we had submitted that probably a week after the initial submission. So it did go into the town. You may not have seen it. I could share it if you'd like to see it, or I can email it to you, but that was it. It came, I think, on November 4th. So it might not have been included with what you reviewed.
Yeah, I think it just missed the package to me. That's all. Okay.
No problem.
Yeah, this is Ethan Chakowski. I'm the traffic engineer for the project, Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. Just in response to some of Mark's comments, we did review them. There were, as he mentioned, we were just many of the previous ones. There's a few comments on just showing a little bit more in our summary tables about the queue lengths and things like that. I would note that we didn't find any level of service F or any approach or movement delays that would indicate an issue. But we can work with Mark to just show everything he wants to see shown in that study. In terms of the crash evaluation, yeah, it looks like maybe there was a miss in that it wasn't included in the appendix there, but we submitted to get crash reports from prior to COVID, because to Mark's point, we did look at a time period between April 2018 and May 2021. So we'll go back and reevaluate that. But we did find when we did our crash analysis for that time period that there wasn't any clear safety issues. But again, we'll go back and look at that and resubmit to Mark. As far as the parking, we'll double check our parking numbers for the square footages, but based on the size of the overall shopping center, using Institute of Transportation Engineering parking demand rates for a shopping center of that size, we did find that there was a total Saturday peak period demand of 803 parking stalls, whereas the current design provides for 931 in the shopping center. So Mark, the town traffic engineer, wanted us to break down by each individual use, which is not typically how it's done, but we did that for that revision, and we'll go back and make sure that our numbers align per his previous comment.
Ethan, this is Kristen. I just want to point out too that I don't know if Mark is speaking specifically to this, but your parking schedule, there's columns that break down the parking counts, but then there's also notes that accommodate or supplement the parking schedule. And the numbers, I don't think they match. So I could be missing something, but if we just want to make sure, it could have been a typo, like I think it's off by a number. So if you just want to make sure, we don't have to get into that now, but if we just want to confirm that.
Yeah. We'll confirm all those details. Apologize if there's a typo there. Like I said, for the overall parking demand of the shopping center, using ITE data rates for that size shopping center, we have more supply than what it's showing for a Saturday peak period. So again, breaking down each individual use, we'll double check all those numbers and make sure that it's consistent, just for clarity.
Ethan, this is Eric Holman. I just glanced at the truck plan, and I'm just going to suggest for next time you show the size of the truck that's being depicted, whose path is being depicted for the delivery. And the board typically also likes to see the trash truck as well as the fire truck or the delivery truck.
Yeah,
Sure.
we have some of that already in the plan set. So
Yeah, I believe those were on Alex and Lay's site plans, which I think he could share if you guys want to discuss it any further. But
I can share those. We'll just make sure to include any future submission, we'll include all of the truck turn plans as well, and it'll reflect any updates. I think the only one that was resubmitted last month was for the fire truck turn, just to confirm that it can circulate around the west side of the building, which was noted in one of the comment letters. So we had just resubmitted that one because that was the only one that had a significant change. The other truck turn templates that were provided previously generally stayed the same, but we can update with the updated site layout and, resubmit those so that everybody has them in their current.
Thanks, Alex. And also for the board's knowledge, again, just because Alex brought that up, the Arlington Fire Department did review this application and this submission, this most recent submission, and didn't have any comments or concerns seemingly about the 18-foot wide drive aisles. So, from my planning standpoint, if emergency access vehicles can access the lot and navigate it with the WB-40 truck, then yeah.
Great. And then just on some of the items from Andy Learn, we have to go through the design for the pump station, and we'll put an engineer's report together that calculates the flows both for sanitary and for water, and that would be submitted. Is that something that can be a condition of an approval, or does that need to be submitted for review prior to any sort of approval by the board?
We'll need at least a draft of that report before approvals.
Okay, so we can work through putting the report together and getting at least the preliminary design for the pump station together as well. And I saw the comments on the utilities as well. I can work with you on that. I think there's one for mitigation relative to the force main and separation from the stormwater, so we can work through that. The comments for the SWIP, we will update as well and get that back in. A lot of the comments are, I don't want to call them housekeeping comments, but just more details that you need to be added there, so that's not an issue. And for the stormwater maintenance agreement and some of these other property, overall shopping center and property items, I think, Bill, if there's any update from McDonald's side and negotiations with the landlord, maybe you can touch on some of those.
Yeah, I apologize. We weren't be able to have a stronger response to or make some sort of a commitment, but we are reviewing the connection with sidewalks. I think there was an interest in having the McDonald's pedestrian sidewalk continue through the shopping center. So that's definitely one thing that we've been reviewing to see if the landlord for the center would be willing to develop that extension. The discussion about adjoining the adjacent shopping center, and I apologize, I forget the name of that other center, haven't really gotten any response of any kind to that. It seems to be something they're perhaps ignoring intentionally, I don't know, but certainly not in anywhere near this development. So I don't know if they're really taking it, as far as a McDonald's requirement, I don't know if they're really taking it seriously that it would be impacted by this approval. So I'm not sure really how to proceed there, other than we have discussed it. My real estate team has been back and forth with the real estate contact at the shopping center with not really any good traction on that item. If there was another one, I apologize. I'm not recalling if it was something else to be addressed there, Alex or Keith.
It would be the stormwater maintenance agreement with the property owner, just because we're tying into their system. So I think that's probably still in discussions as well with the landlord.
So the town.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the
Sorry.
town has a form stormwater agreement that it likes to have enacted, and I don't know if we've sent that to you yet. What we've been doing lately is just collecting the information when we get closer to final with the name of the site plans and all the details that would need to go in it, and then we would actually prepare the agreement and send it to you for review. So as we get closer to the end of this process, we can take care of that.
Okay, that would be great. I think if we had a document to put before them, that would certainly help us get some traction on that for sure.
Thank you. I move that the planning board open for public hearing.
Second.
Heard a second, called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to speak on this project?
Anyone on the Zoom who wishes to speak on the project, on the McDonald's project, South Road? Kevin, I see you unmuted yourself. Does that indicate that you wish to speak?
Sure, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself to Bill. Kevin Langen with Cameron Poughkeepsie, who's the owner of the South Road Crossing project to the north. I can get you my contact information circulated if you need it for anything.
That would be great. I'll certainly pass it along to the other folks on my team. Appreciate that.
And everything looks great. Site plan renderings look fantastic. Looking forward to it.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Anyone else on the Zoom? You can just unmute yourself or raise your hand. No one else in the audience? No? Okay. I think we're all set.
All right. I move that we close the public
No.
hearing. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I move that the planning board adjourn the public hearing to January 20th, 2021,
2022.
2022, I'm sorry.
That's my. No, I don't wanna-
Fantastic.
Do I
It's
hear
been a long
second?
year.
Second? I heard a second. All called into question. All
Second.
in Favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Thank you all very much.
Wait,
Have a good
No,
evening.
One
no,
more.
we're not done yet.
Oh.
One more. No, we got to go around the board.
Peter, do you have any questions?
Just a couple of quick, with regard to the architecture. Are there going to be roof mounted units on this building?
Yes, we do have rooftop air conditioning units, and we do have a parapet on the building that does screen them.
Great. My other comment here is, and this is just to help you in the future, on the east elevation, and it looks great. By the way, it's a tremendous improvement over what we originally had submitted. On the northeast corner of the building, you have 3 doors there. Directly to the south of that, you have an awning over over windows. There's got to be some way either extend the awning just to make the building look a little bit more consistent, because you have that warehouse look, facing this, basically facing South Road. So we'd probably be looking to you to do something, either change, they look like steel doors, either to change the design of the doors, extend the awning over the doors, but do something to make that section of that east facade more consistent with the rest of the east facade.
Okay, we can certainly continue to look at that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, we want to avoid the warehouse look, which is what
There are architectural features we have on the, I guess that would be the west side elevation that might be able to be incorporated on the east side to help add a little more differentiation so they don't just look like utility doors. I think there's some opportunity there that we can investigate.
Great, thank you.
Not sure we heard. Ahmad?
The rendering looked fantastic. I don't have any other comments. I mean, Peter can ask the question. Thanks.
Thank you. Bob?
I don't have any questions. I also think the renderings look good.
Rocco?
Yeah, a couple of comments. I didn't see any outdoor area planned. I assume that that's a function of the geography more than anything else, because I know I've been to a lot of McDonald's that do have outdoor areas planned. And if you would come back in the future for an outdoor area, where would that be? So you might want to think about that. So I assume that there's no outdoor area. I'm assuming that that's a correct statement on my part.
We're not illustrating an outdoor dining area currently. That is typically controlled by our owner operator who would be assigned to the store, would make that decision based on what the customer demand or need was. That is something the operator does actually pay for themselves directly. It's not part of the what the corporation partners with on development, but we do have a fairly large grass area on the east side of the building that in most cases would be parking, but there had been some concerns expressed earlier about the parking backing up into the drive-through lane stacking. So we had eliminated that parking there. And I think that area certainly could, if not immediately in the future, become a potential outdoor dining area. But it just wasn't being considered at this time as part of this presentation.
All right, Kristen, would that require
Yeah,
coming
so
back here to
I,
the board, correct?
yeah, that would absolutely require
That's
it.
what I thought.
I would recommend strongly that you figure out whether or not you're planning to propose one at this time, to save yourself a world of undoing work just to put in the outdoor area. We also have very specific code language in our town code as it relates to outdoor dining facilities. So you would have to review that and comply with the code language.
Okay. Yeah, I don't believe
it was captured in a previous review that I provided, and I thought the answer was no, you're not proposing one. So I'm not sure if that's changed, but again,
Well, I didn't see one,
yeah.
and most of the McDonald's which I have been to have them. So that's why I was curious. Okay, second comment, and it's more of a comment. As you consider what type of charging station you're going to install, I would recommend that a cabinet type looks good. That would be the one that would look the best and would make it much more attractive. And Kristen talked about the signage areas aspect of it. So that's those are my comments at this time anyway. Thank you.
Joan? I have no comments, just to point out Kristen's point about the fire department being okay with the 18 feet was very helpful. So that's it.
And I have no further comments at this time. Ready for a motion?
I guess I would just like for the planning board to weigh in then very clearly if you're comfortable with the layout then as it's proposed, because if we get 2 months from now and all of a sudden you're like, this just isn't working, that's really not productive.
Is there any, like, just looking at the site and contemplating something other than angled parking, is there space for something other than angled parking on this lot?
The way that it's laid out, it seems to be the only thing that works. I don't know if there's, the planning board could certainly ask the applicant to provide samples or layouts that they've tried to demonstrate or further emphasize their point. That could be something that you request.
It does look tight. I mean,
Yes.
it definitely looks tight. And
Yeah.
I think the one down in Wappingers is tight and
Mhm.
it has, if I recall correctly, parallel parking or angled parking. I mean, if the applicant could propose just, or at least show us what they've done to consider something other than angled parking. I think at the end of the day, at least for me, if this is all that's going to fit and the fire department's okay with it, then I would be okay with it. But if there is some other way to mitigate this, because it does look tight.
Is it the angled parking, Joan, that you're concerned about? No, because I think we were originally talking about the orientation of the building itself.
Oh, the orientation of the building, I honestly don't have as big a problem with, but
Okay.
just the layout with the 18 feet going around, and backing out with the angle is tight, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I can speak to that. 18 feet for angled parking truly is, from an engineering and a site layout perspective, an industry standard. That usually is plenty of room for a car with angled parking. The nature of the angled parking provides for, less requirement for a motorist to have to turn their wheel when they're backing out. So 18 feet really is that. A lot of ordinances, and I do a lot more work in New Jersey, but a lot of ordinances in New Jersey, and I found in the Hudson Valley as well, they, for one-way circulation, 18 foot wide from a drive aisle perspective is sufficient and meets industry standards. So I think that works well, especially for McDonald's. We do a lot of these in the tri-state area. 18 feet is a standard that we use, and that's usually vetted out pretty well with McDonald's, the McDonald's team and their civil engineering group as well nationally. So I think that the 18 feet it is certainly sufficient for one way.
Yeah, I would just, not to argue or disagree wholly with you, but I can see how that design works. But in the northeast corner of the lot, if a car is backing out of one of those parking spaces and they're parked head in, right? If they have a vehicle next to them that might be larger than them, they're backing out into a bypass lane and they might not be able to see a vehicle coming. And it's also right up against in sort of a pinch point because now you have this hard landscape that defines your dual drive-through lanes. So I just think, you know, again, this is one of those, I think it might be beneficial for the board to see a demonstration perhaps of maybe alternatives you've considered. And if you're going to, again, already be seeking an area variance for the number of parking spaces, you know, losing a couple more might actually be in your best interest for this, you know, safety of patrons of your facility. But sorry, that's my two cents on that.
No, and I think it's, I mean, I do agree with you. And if it would necessitate reconfiguring the building itself, then that's a separate issue in order to get a little more wiggle room for cars coming in and out. And I understand the 18 feet works, but it does then force you into a one-way traffic flow, which obviously works in some places, but I think most people feel that it's tight. And when you back out, it's not ideal, but I understand that it does work.
We will certainly look at, Kristen, to your point, you know, maybe losing a parking space here or there, you know, considering we need to go in front of the zoning board anyway. We will certainly look at that. Maybe there's other ways we can address that. And I will, I'll reach out to you as well as after we put some consideration to it and maybe walk through it with you just to make sure that everyone's comfortable from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Do we have a motion?
I move that the planning board defer further action on this application, direct the applicant to respond to comments in writing from the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following items 1 through 11, and any of the comments made at the meeting today by the planning board.
Second.
Okay, I heard a second. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
Thanksgiving. Take care.
Thank you. All right, next up is Eastdale Village. Good evening.
Yeah, that one's working. Just gonna. Yeah.
Thank you again. Jeff Kane with Curtail Development here representing the Eastdale Village. Maybe I can start sharing the screen if that's
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right. So again, thank you for having us on again this evening. This is the 16th site plan amendment. And I know some of the changes in here seem kind of small, but we didn't try to bundle them all together. And they do become time critical for us. We're out there building every day, and some stuff we'd like to get done before the weather changes. So we're going to appreciate your allowing us to be here again this evening. And just a kind of a brief overview. This is kind of where we are on the west side. As you may know, all of this residential is certainly up and operational. Medical building is operational. Building B
B, which is again, our headquarters now. I forgot to mention that the last time I was here is that we're actually representing the project, and we're in the town of Gibson, right? So for so long we've been our job was located in Pleasant Valley, so it's good to be part of the town here. On the A buildings, the number of these are open, including our most recent legal shop is open here. So we again cottages were all operational. We started to dig foundation on the E4 building, the big hole being slowly filled in there. So E4 and E3 we had additional winter, and then A1 and A2 Ross's Deli and the basement. Expect that they'll be open, looking for a TCO on the Rossi's probably sometime for the holidays, but probably not actually open until after the holidays. And we'll talk about some of these highlighted areas. I'll go into some detail where there's some changes. And then on the east side, again, buildings 16, 17, 18, the residential buildings are all under construction, as well as the mail building associated with those. And we'll be looking for a TCO for occupancy for building 18 for the year. We hope to proceed with construction on some of our commercial tenants. So again, project as we get to proceed. So the first issue that we had in terms of the change was adding some amenities to the east side, and I've got kind of the overall picture here, really behind building 18 next to the second sale building. What we're proposing is to add another fire pit and grill station with pavers in the area to allow for seasonal seating out here. And just to face into that, we have the shuffleboard and the play area for our site. Landscape in here, and we think it'll be a nice addition to the site of the project as well. The second issue is one related to this walking path behind the medical building up to Lutheran Care. This was an issue really raised by the Lutheran Care as part of the earlier conversation. It wasn't in a location or something you would necessarily propose, but what Lutheran Care suggested, and I kind of mocked this up on over here. Well, Lutheran Care suggested that they would build a sidewalk to our property line, and then we'd match the sidewalk down into the commercial area. And you've seen this in the plans at the beginning. As has happened with Lutheran Care, they have indicated to us they have very, very significant financial issues. Are going to be able to build the rest of the sidewalk. Now we're going to anticipate at any point in the future will they be able to build the sidewalk. So we're asking them to modify the site plan and we take that sidewalk connector out of the I don't want you to think that this doesn't mean there's not an interconnection from the projects. Obviously there is. And I've just shown here Concord Village Drive, some of the adjacent sidewalks and how they're connected. Concord Village Drive has existing sidewalk all the way down to 144. Match ties into the DOT system, which we built along our frontage. And then we also have our sidewalk here. There was I know a comment to potentially provide a crosswalk. I assume that the idea was put a crosswalk here. We are very opposed to putting a crosswalk kind of mid-block here because there's no stop control for vehicles, and we think that would be a safety to have next to kind of crosswalk. So commercial area, take a look to
Other changes, again, they've become kind of minor, but we had some minor footprint changes for buildings E2 and E3. Buildings got 60 square feet, I think it was smaller. But again, referenced in some of the project details. We also realized we had never shown before the truck loading movements, and so they're now on the truck movement plans on East Hill Avenue, and then back into the behind the other here. We also not shown a loading zone, so typical places in the site. We signed here a 10-minute loading zone on the spot as a we also look to make some improvements related to snow removal. This area is behind the L buildings, and what we've really done here is we slid the refuse area to the east to kind of widen this area for an added downward curve here, widen this area to be able to push snow in. Also looking to eliminate the curbing around this island here and just leave it striped. What the snow removal team tells me, this becomes almost as a kind of a staging area. Snow gets in here and then it gets fully pushed into this snow storage area behind the curb. So kind of leaving this area open enables that to work efficiently, get the snow off of East Hill Avenue, out of this parking area, residential parking areas, in this case, the area for. Really kind of critical to the operations of another kind of monthly issue, but it happens, our refuse area got larger here. This is the one behind buildings H and I are at the top of the screen. Larger size of the cardboard and garbage. Again, back to snow storage. This is the next to building 15. We look for mountable curb there. Again, push into the six behind building 15. Field change request to eliminate retaining wall. This is right at the corner of building 16. And technical engineer, retaining wall. This is the other end of building 16, we reoriented, separated out some of the handicap parking and reworked the sidewalk here on this entrance. And we also widened the throat of really not much widen the throat. We kind of changed the radius of the access curbs coming in and out of the header down to Victory Lane. This remains access point down to our met with department staff, and we had trees here along the proposed dog park. This is Victory Lane here on the side of the screen. These will help screen views into the stormwater facility that's open. And kind of last issue. This is the relocated yellow house, the house that was the Ortega property, 44 across the top. Our neighbor to the north, the Kelsey's, have reviewed this, and we have 6-foot privacy fence proposed here. They think they want landscape in there instead of the fence, at least from here back to their garage. We have no issues with that. Obviously, it's a plan change. And the board has any relationship that either put landscaping or a fence, depending on what they wanted, and then put it on the next. This is something that we're kind of agnostic on, that we think is what the people wants there works for us. And then the kind of just the tables, square footage changes. I said those buildings at 16 feet smaller. Actually, they got 14 feet smaller. Both two. Their shed got 16 feet smaller. And to kind of account for that, so we maintain no change in commercial square footage. The actually building A1 got 41 square feet smaller, so we've made building I 69 square feet larger, so that we don't have any change in business uses across the site. And on the residential side, the residential areas for above the commercial for building overall, we end up with 134 square feet of residential area, and no change in so site-wide, there's no parking change. Square foot less of non-residential use. Minor, we just want to keep the numbers straight. The issues we have on the plan scale.
Thank you. Eric?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. The project, for record keeping, it's on for seeker consistency and for consideration of an amended site plan. And I think Jeff had indicated that he'd be prepared for architectural review of the shed and one building, which the planning board could consider after the site plan. We took no exception to the changes. As Jeff said, they're mostly small. 2 points. One was on, a couple of them are new that Jeff brought up last there, and I guess the one with regard to the Kelsey boundary, which whatever the board's pleasure is, no exception either way. On the planned changes, the change to the refuse south of building L8. We had a comment on that. The staff comment was based on the submittal, which indicated it was a access issue for trash. So we recently learned that it's actually about snow storage. Looks to be, I don't have any particular problem. I still wonder if there's a possibility. There's a light pole standing out in that striped area. I don't know if that's going to interfere with snow storage. It would be nice to see some degree of curbing around there to define the channelization, just because it is a slip lane in from Route 44. But the planning board's pleasure on that. I don't have any strong issue with it. And then, Jeff, you mentioned the snow change near building 15. If that is a snow storage area, could you just show that on the plans next time with the submittal?
Sure. Well, it was called out, but it's not.
Yeah, it's just the other areas are shown as snow storage. That one's not. So it wasn't immediately apparent as to, I didn't have a problem with the mountable curb, but just keeping up with the graphics. I know there's a lot here. That's it. So we're recommending the board proceed with a consistency determination for environmental seeker and to grant a conditioned site plan.
Andy, you still on?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did have one point. Andy's comment about a crosswalk, he was correct that the Concord Village Drive crossing should be delineated. However, I think it's an open question for the planning board as to whether or not they want a crosswalk access at that point in the sidewalk system. And the planning board might want to engage in that. discussion, there's certainly not going to be a great deal of pedestrian traffic to and from the Lutheran home from within the site. However, there are workers at Lutheran Care who may be trying to get to the commercial portion of the site. And if so, is it reasonable for them to walk all the way out to Route 44 in order to cross Concord Village Drive? That seems like a long way, and it doesn't seem like a mid-block crosswalk would be objectionable. Perhaps some yield signs could be posted there to make the crosswalk visible, those prominent bright yellow ones. And so we'd invite you to discuss that, indicate your pleasure, and if you want to leave that for further staff discussion with the applicant with your preference, just let us know.
Andy?
Sure. Yeah, I think you pretty much covered my comments on the ADA on the crosswalks. I do want to mention, and I didn't get into my comments, but in the past, we've had some long discussions on site about detectable ADA ramps and detectable warning fields. Just a suggestion that Jeff, we may want to take a close look at any of these revisions to the other crosswalks to make sure that we're in full compliance with those requirements now, rather than us trying to kind of sort through all that later. I am asking also for just an update on the impervious area coverages in the form of a SWIP addendum. It seems like it's still pretty much a wash with the changes that are being made, but even just if there's no changes, just a confirmation of that would be acceptable. Yeah, and I had the same comment that Eric did about the mountable curb by building 15. I wasn't quite sure what it was for. I assumed it was for snow storage, but if we can label that, that would be helpful. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Andy. Mark didn't have anything on this, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. It doesn't review these two.
Okay. At this time, I would like to open for site plan public hearing. Do I hear a second? Hear a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone on Zoom or in the meeting board now that would like to comment on this particular project?
Again, looking for comments on the Eastdale site plan amendment. You can raise your hand or unmute yourself if you're on Zoom.
Seeing none, I move that we close site plan public hearing for this particular project. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Seconded. All those in question?
Aye.
Aye.
6-0. Peter, did you have any questions on this?
Just a few. Regarding the crosswalk to Wartburg, was there, it's been a while. Was there, did Wartburg represent that at some point they would actually build a sidewalk or a path or something to that effect?
They did. That was the original agreement that they wanted to build down. And we picked a location that worked for their grade wise in their front door, that we'd be able to meander a path up to the proper line.
Okay,
Didn't work out.
my thinking is things happen and you never know, an angel might appear to help Wartburg to get them in a position at some point where that would be favorable to them and it would be feasible for them to do. So I would, I would prefer to keep the crosswalk, even if it's not, keep it alive, even though it's not a functioning crosswalk, but at some point, if Wartburg should get the ability to make that happen, at least we would have something in place in the future to.
And I have no issue with leaving the proposed path on the plan. The technical matter, we can't close out the CO on the medical building because that path is then. I don't know if there's some way of the crosswalk in and having the proposed path as a, you know, as a future should work for build or.
Well, if we could,
I don't know how that all.
okay, if we found a way to do it so that you could get that CO. And
we've done that on, on other issues by a title page note.
Sure. Okay.
You know, and then you could just show that it would be built under whatever the conditions are before whatever the time period is reasonable.
Good. Okay.
That's great. Yes.
All right, terrific. The next thing is with the Kelsey House. Have you had any discussions with them with regard to what type of landscaping they'd be looking for?
We have, but I don't have the real, real detail of what they
Okay,
want.
so-
They just, their reaction the other day was just when they were talking to them, and I wasn't in the group, but something that they really liked. I think something softer, they thought, than a fence.
Sure.
But would give them some privacy.
Okay, so you'll let us know,
If that,
whatever
again,
it
if
is.
it's an acceptable swamp, then I,
Sure.
yes, we would be able to represent them. Yeah, we'll, board is fine, we'll make the change.
And something I've always meant to ask you, and that is, was Otto Way part of the sales contract?
It was not. It's more just an appreciation of who Otto Frank is.
Sure. Sure, great, nice, thanks.
Do you have any questions?
Ahmad, are you on?
Yeah, no, I actually, again, Peter kind of asked the same. I'm in favor of keeping the crosswalk alive, just in case in the future, following what Eric was saying, that connectivity would help people. That's all.
Can I just ask for the record, board members have respectively talked about the crosswalk and the pathway. So I'm not sure which, can you just maybe clarify which one you're talking about? The crosswalk across Concord Village Drive?
No, I thought we were talking about.
Crosswalk back here was one of Andy's comments was to, or maybe it was Andy, I don't know who was to, if there's no path to remove this crosswalk. I think that's the issue, so. I would have to leave that alone.
So what we're saying is that so the crosswalk behind the medical office building, right, and then the path. There's two things.
There's a path behind the medical building that they're proposing to eliminate, and there's a crosswalk.
No.
I thought over north on Concord Village.
Right, but there's also a crosswalk to the path.
Okay.
That's what you're missing. Yeah, so the
Okay.
crosswalk to the path. Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Right. So we're talking about keeping both the crosswalk and the path alive for the potential future,
Got it.
You never know,
because you never know.
things happen.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And Peter, do you stand either way for the crosswalk off of Village Drive in between? I think it's between building 5 and 6, right?
We're very much opposed to that from a safety perspective.
Okay.
And we don't own or control Concord Village Drive, but it's, still concerned about it.
Peter, did you have a?
As far as I agree with Jeff. in
Okay.
that regard.
Great. Bob?
I don't have any question, just comment on crosswalk across the active road that's there now. And I agree, if there's cars going through there and there's no signage, even a yellow sign, I think that's inviting trouble. I go through those cooperative and they have these pedestrian pushes a button and the lights flash, and that gets the attention of drivers much better than the yellow sign.
Yeah.
The slow sign, something like that. So unless something like that could be done, it's probably not worthwhile putting cross.
And I looked into our rights on Concord Village Drive, and we have the right of access. And totally that, but that's really. Traffic flow along this. again, going back. 2018, started looking at
I think the problem is that people will go the shortest route, right? So the people who work, let's say, working there who want to go get a bagel, they're going to come down Concord on the other side of the street, on the sidewalk. And the quickest route is going to be to cross the street there. And it doesn't matter that there's a crosswalk down at the bottom of Dutchess Turnpike. So that's why I think it's a safety improvement that for people who would be using it. And I don't know. I think with appropriate signage, it would be just like any other mid-block crossing. I mean, it's not a busy road.
the typical response I get from the user is that there's an obligation to provide a safe route, and that's like what we have here. You can't account for somebody still where they get to the well and cross here, but it's not something that we should encourage through design.
Rocco?
Okay, first of all, I want to echo what Peter said and keep that walkway and crosswalk in back of the medical arts building, keep that alive. And then I also tend to agree that putting a crosswalk mid Concord Village Road there, I don't think that that's a great idea. I mean, people will cross, but I see as soon as they put in the crosswalk, then it's their issue if anything happens. So that's my position.
Okay. Jill?
I am in favor of maintaining the pathway with that crosswalk, and I am neutral on the other crosswalk.
Yeah, I agree with everyone here. And I'm not too sure about the crosswalk on the Village Drive there. Because as you said, it could possibly be a safety issue, especially if no signs are put up. However, people might do it anyway, so.
Jeff, did you say you
Yeah.
don't have the legal authority to do it?
I
Even if
think that's what he was alluding to before, right?
So I'm not sure that, I mean, if Jeff
So if
doesn't
you
have
legally
control
can't,
over
then
that
put it
street,
anyway.
we
Yeah.
can't really make him put that
Okay.
in without the consent of the property owner, which is sort of beyond the scope of this. If he only has the right for access over it and can't impede it, that then it would require whoever entities have the consent, of that.
Okay.
So, Jeff, maybe you want Jeff to just share with us the document that gives you the access, and then we can confirm that that's the case, because obviously we can't compel Jeff to do something he doesn't have the power to do,
Right.
much as we might like to.
And also for the Kelly house, I'm actually friends with Kelly Kelsey and her husband. I've known them practically all my life. So yeah, definitely if they're looking for landscaping instead of a fence, go for it. Yeah, and I think that's all I had. Did anyone have anything else? No? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
The planning board find that Eastdale Village 16th amended site plan involves incremental changes to the Eastdale Village project of its full magnitude and scope that are non-significant and consistent with the previous secret findings adopted March 15, 2018 and amended September 7, 2020 as modified by the proposed Eastdale Village application received October 25th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion 6-1, 6-0.
Planning board grant additional amended site plan approval for the Eastdale Village 16th amended site plan subject to the following. Respond to the comments of all reviewing departments and agencies. Said responses to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness, including but not limited to the following. Items 1 through 6, which includes the comments at today's public hearing on planning board.
Second.
It's been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's been carried 6-0. Thank you, Jeff. Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm not done. Can I interrupt?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
So let me start with our shed. This is again for maintenance use on this side of the street. There's a big maintenance barn across the street. Just realized we need a shed here because bringing snow equipment back and forth across 44 sometimes just doesn't work. And we just look to make it like it can fit in. So it has the same hardy siding as the rest of the project, same black shingle roof, 2 overhead doors on the side facing the vertical, white trim. Again, so we've got this hardy called woodland cream is the yellowish color for the face. We ended up
Can you hold up the woodland cream one again? That looks different than, this looks
Yeah, it
more like
almost
a
looks
line.
green, right?
now it's yellow on my screen, right? Is it
Yeah,
it's
on
more of a
ours,
light
it
green.
looks a little
okay,
bit.
yeah, that's yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Is that better than the light green?
Yes.
Here, catch. Oh, I can.
I'm gonna, yeah.
Okay. You don't want to come dig them out of the room across from my office again.
I need to reuse this one tonight.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, building K1, which I submitted to you, and if the board is amenable, I have some K2 drawings as well. We could do them both, but again, if it's if you haven't seen it ahead of time, those tonight. So.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, yep.
That's,
Yep,
right.
go
So this is kind of this streetscape of East Avenue South, and again, the buildings right in the corner, and then the break, K1, K2. And here was the K1 as submitted. Again, the same black shingles, the hardy siding above and below, black trim on the windows. We do want to present a change from what I had here. So the upper remains the cobblestone. This upper side of the cobblestone, and we just got some information from the corner there. Instead of the bottom being the Monterey, which was this brownish, they wanted to go with the white on the bottom. So we have the upper that change. And then this is being combined, and I late, but last minute, we have the drawings for K1 as well. We have them side by side. K2 side by side with K1. You can see continued the windows, continued the frontage. The roof line is projects a little higher than the K1 building, keeping the same shingles. And then instead of the siding above and below both sections would be this deep ocean, this blue on this building next to the Stone and the demolition. And then that will continue across the sides. And this is the side that you see of the K1 building. Again, the change. So the range still from the lower side. And the opposite section of the K2 building would be all in the ocean. You can see what we've done with this shed roof on both buildings. This really screens the mechanicals. So we have the gable, we have a sloping roof, and it really becomes apparent in the rear. So the mechanical roof is kind of just behind this kind of false wall here. So this is the rear of one same trail, same spend K1 plus K2 again. All the mechanicals continue some change in mullions as you go from one building to the next. So, there's a lot of maximum styles.
Just a quick question. I just happened to notice today, but the buildings look great that are going up. Building A, East Avenue North, and I did notice in driving by that the mechanicals on that building that are facing, if you're coming from Poughkeepsie, you can see them. Are those going to get screened?
There is some screening yet to
Does anyone have any questions on architecture? Okay. I move that we accept architecture for building K1, shed S2, and K2. Okay, I've heard a second. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
You have an opening date for Rossi's here?
I think they're going to have their commercial kitchen open for catering between Thanksgiving or something. But I don't know that they're going to actually open until after
Okay.
May not see it.
No. Waiting for 3 years, so.
I understand, right. You don't have to look at it every day, right?
No.
Right, yeah. You can still go there. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next up is 44 Lagrange Ave, shared parking, seeker review, amended site plan, and special use permit hearing.
Okay, Jeff, can you just forward us the renderings for K2 that you displayed to the board?
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Hello?
I'm Sullivan, I'm representing the applicants. This application is to amend previously approved special use permit and site plan for 44 Lagrange Avenue. That approval was development for the ground floor restaurant and 3 one-bedroom home units on the second floor. As part of that previous proposal that was approved shared parking covenant located at 39 Lagrange Avenue. This application is to limit shared parking at 39 Lagrange and to be located at the 42 Lagrange site, which is in fact adjacent to. So the parking that's located at 42 Lagrange consists of 8 parking spots, which you can see in the site plan. There's one spot. 3 of the parking spaces are dedicated for dwelling at 42 Lagrange, and the other remaining spots are for the dwelling. There's some site improvements, the access drive to 44 located on the west side of the existing dwelling. Received some of the comments from staff, engineering, so.
Sure. This application is on the agenda tonight for a public hearing and also for seeker review and the amended site plan and special use permit review and approval. It's pretty straightforward. The board did receive a later submittal that staff requested for a more complete information to address the special use permit criteria. We did receive those and suggested to the board that they're adequate, which would take care of our comment number 2, if the board's in agreement. Otherwise, we provided a draft negative declaration for the changes relative to the previous approval. The board continues as with an uncoordinated seeker review as it did before. It did occur to me with regard to the reference to the covenant that has to be still remains to be changed subject to approval. We just said that the note needs to be referenced on the plan, and I realized later that the previous plan 44 simply has a note underneath the zoning table. That would be the simplest way to address that as far as the plan goes. And then the document, I know Chris has signed it, but we ask that you please do not file it until after the attorney has reviewed and approved it in case it requires any changes. Otherwise, we believe if the board's in agreement, it's ready to go.
Andy?
Yeah, I think we have some comments that relating to the driveway, relocation of the sidewalk, and adjustments with the curb, relocation of the driveway curb cut, and the sidewalk repairs. We are also still looking for some soil testing that can be done as a condition of approval before they start work, before the plans are signed. Everything else is pretty much straightforward. That's it. I think that's ready to go.
Okay, thank you. I move that we open for public hearing. Second. All those in question? Aye. Motion 6-0. All right, looks like we have a couple of people here signed up. William Kistner. Okay, Robert Kistner.
Come up to the. Well, you can sit down. It's probably more
Doesn't
comfortable.
matter.
Good. All right, I am a property owner at 46 Lagrange, which is across Fairmont Avenue. And I'm also the business owner at 35 Fairmont, which is directly next to the parking area. I have a couple of objections just because of water issues and drainage. There used to be a carport on that property, which is removed. Once they removed that property, all the water shed from that is now no longer going in our basement. So that was an improvement, them taking that down. I'm concerned about proper drainage and runoff from a large parking lot. Don't have problems with our foundation or anything else along those lines. Also, in the same respect, snow plowing and removal in the winter. looks like it'll be pretty restrictive to get in and out of there with a plow or anything like that. We have some of our mechanicals back there, air conditioning unit, part of a freezer unit. Be concerned with them getting, snow plowed in or using access to them from snowbanks, which are detrimental to our restaurant. I know that the main things right now would be, the water would be a problem. I mean, it's a high water table over there. They hit water when they were digging for foundation, so to alleviate that being a problem to our foundation or anything like that. I mean, I don't know what kind of drainage is proposed or anything like that. So that would be my objection to that.
Andy, since you're on at the moment, you want to talk a little bit about the drainage that's proposed? I know you can't see him. We see him on the screen in front of you, but he's, that's orange here. Yeah.
I can see it's a little hard to hear. I'm not sure if his microphone is working, but I think I heard the gist of it. That's the reason for the soil testing. The plan proposes they're proposing an infiltration trench to handle the runoff from the new parking lot, which would allow it to infiltrate into the ground. The soil testing is required to prove that they have adequate separation and the soils will accept the water that's being put in the ground. If that does not prove out, if they don't meet those requirements, they may have to look at alternatives such as, putting in an actual catch basin and running it out to the street. If that's the case, that would have to be, revised and shown on the plan.
Those things, Andy, would be resolved with certainty prior to any plan signature, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Kistner, just to check, you mentioned access to your equipment behind the building and concern about damage to it, and I didn't understand how that related to this.
Well, the parking
proposal.
area butts up to the back of the building. There's some area along there where we also have an air conditioning unit and a unit for a refrigeration.
So
if they're plowing snow in the back and it's hard for them to get that out, I would be concerned with it getting hit with either snow drift or whatever from the plow.
Okay, I think thank you. I think I understand it. There is about I can't read the dimension. It looks like about between 6 and 10 feet between the edge of the parking and the property line.
Okay.
And I thought that the existing conditions plan also showed a fence, at least along part of the rear of your property on your property.
So there was a fence and it's been removed? Okay, well.
And by you?
No.
Was it your fence?
I believe so. It was on our property.
Also, just for your comfort level, the plan does show a line of land. There's the parking, and then there's the infiltration trench for drainage. And then there's a line at the end, right, along the edge of the parking, and then there's a line of landscaping, and then there's the property line.
Okay.
So thank you. That
I
helps.
appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
William Kistner?
How do you do, folks? Bob hit on most of the things that I was going to talk on.
It should be, yeah.
Well, yeah, Robert has already spoken about most of the issues that we get discussed.
No, it's not, Andy. You're not hearing it. Could you use the other one? Yeah, please. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Maybe just switch it.
It's either the switch or the battery. Yeah. One of the two.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
So Robert has hit on most of the things that I was going to talk about as well. The big concern is, as he said before, we got quite a bit of runoff from the building next door, the shed that was next door. And that would come right down and then into our basement every time it would rain. Since that's been removed, that's gone away. That's a good thing. But now my concern is it possible, and I forget the term used for the trench?
Infiltration trench.
Okay. Is it possible to have that on the other side of the property? My concern and have it slope away from my building, because it's still a concern that water is going to be getting into the ground. And I realize there's 6 to 10 feet, but I still have a concern that that's going to somehow seep into the basement of the restaurant. And that would be my biggest concern.
Andy, again, if you have any thoughts about that, and I guess, it's important just so you realize that our engineer hearing the comments.
Yeah.
It's good that he is, so he'll be able to focus on that when he reviews a final
Yeah.
plan set. Yeah.
I mean, that's a fair comment, and that's something that should be considered as far as the proximity of the infiltration trench to the building. Yeah, that's definitely something that should be looked at. If there's a way to push it away from the building, I think that would be a good idea if there's any way to do that.
Okay. That's all I really have. Thank you very much for your time and have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Was there anyone else online or in the meeting room that wanted to comment on this project?
Not seeing any.
Okay,
Good.
not seeing any, I propose that we close the public hearing. And second, call the question, all those in favor?
I guess you guys didn't hear me.
Oh, was this someone?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hello. Is this public meeting closing? Is this the end of it?
This is for 44 Lagrange. Were you wanting to talk on that particular?
No, I thought this was, new, closing business or other business.
No, that's a little later.
Oh, no. How late are you guys going to be there?
A little while still. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. I'll see if I'll wait. I have another meeting to go to as well, so it's a little conflict. Okay. Thank you. I'll hold back.
You're welcome. Okay. Did you want to respond to any of that?
So, yeah, the infiltrate, is this on?
Okay.
The infiltration trench that we proposed, as the town engineer mentioned, we have a machine on site, and I need to get our design consultant for drainage to, I guess, everyone coordinate at the same time. So if it turns out that that's going to be a problem, we could go back to the original plan where we had catch basins, and if it's going to cause an issue with groundwater and potentially flooding the neighbor's basement. So I think I'm an architect, not an engineer, so it's one of those things we'll have to work out with our consultant as well as the town engineer. If it turns out it's not going to, the infiltration trench doesn't work, we'll go back to plan A or some other way to resolve it. So it should be noted that from the edge of the parking lot to the property line is about 9'4". So there's room to work there. It's not, and also as part of even the previous approval, if snow buildup is excessive, it's going to be removed from the site.
Right.
So.
I just want to touch back on the fence.
The fence, I'll have to check the surveyor's survey on that existing fence. I do know that some of the equipment on the adjacent property actually encroaches. It's on the survey map that the applicant survey performed. Some of it does encroach. It's only a few inches, so it may not be, might be some leeway, but
Okay.
in terms of the fence, I don't have any knowledge of that, to be honest.
Do we have any?
Want to close the public
I already did that.
hearing?
Do we have any information on whether or not that was his fence or their fence, and whether or not any of their stuff encroaches on his property?
If it has to do with events on the other property, it's not part of this site plan review or approval. And it would be between the owners, I think.
Okay.
Lisa can comment on that.
Right,
As
so-
far as encroachments, if there's equipment encroaching, again, it's presumably this site plan would show it and how to deal with it, and or not. If it's there, it's between the owners unless it's an issue for the site plan. And
Right, I mean, if, as John says, it was only encroaching a few inches and he's okay with leaving it there, and it doesn't impact anything that this board is approving in terms of the design for the project, then it becomes a private matter between those two landowners.
As well as the fence.
And right, I mean, the fence, they'll be able to determine whose property it was on. And so if it turns out, that it was if it belonged to the neighbors and it was removed improperly, I'm sure they'll be able to work it out. And if it was on this property, then they had the authority to remove it and it's not shown on the plans any longer, so.
We did submit a survey with our last submission from John Decker, and I don't have a copy with me.
Okay.
But it may show the fence on there because his survey was done back in June.
I have a copy of the survey. I'm looking at it. I see a fence between the Kistner property and the
44 Lagrange.
44 Lagrange, but I don't see one on this
So
parcel.
that fence would be on the 42 site toward the rear of the property behind the Fairmont property adjacent, which would be Billy Bob's. I believe that's the fence the individual spoke about.
Okay. Why don't we go around the room? Peter, do you have any questions?
Question for the town engineer. That is, how good is the science when you're looking at that trench versus catch basin? So that moving forward, if we make a determination that the neighboring property owners don't continue to get floods in their basement.
Well, the science is fairly good in terms of, because there's two types of tests that need to be run. There's a test where we dig a deep hole and we look for signs of groundwater, either physical water or evidence of it. That'll tell us, what we're dealing with and whether or not there's separation to that. And the other is actually an infiltration test that physically, we watch the level drop as the water goes into the ground. So with knowing that is between those two things, that gives us a very good idea of how the trench is going to work. The information available in terms of how it's going to spread and how it could affect the neighboring property is a little less I don't want to say reliable, but it's harder to tell, which is why it's the more separation you can give, the better, especially with a soil that doesn't, if the soil doesn't infiltrate as well as say, other.
Okay, so we may, as a condition of approval, use your effort to determine what's the best way moving forward. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
One other question that I have, and I brought this up before. If you look at the surface area of the parking and the driveway, and you look at the surface area of the snow storage, it doesn't seem possible that you could, that space could accommodate snow storage for that size parking lot.
We did add notes to the plans about, a significant amount of snow would actually be physically removed from the site. And that was part of the, I believe, the approval last time. It was the same, 39 Lagrange was basically the same situation.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. As long as it's going to be, that's a condition of approval, that the snow will be removed off site if necessary.
100%.
The question is, who makes that determination, I guess?
Well, if it were found that parking spaces that were required were being blocked because snow was in them, then the town would have the ability to go in and say you're in violation of your site plan because we need these parking spaces to be clear. So hopefully we won't get that much snow and have to test it out.
Amen. Thank you.
Ahmad, do you have any questions?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Bob,
No, nothing from me.
Rocco?
Nothing new here. I'm just a little uncomfortable with the whole discussion here regarding the drainage and the snow storage and everything else. It seems we're putting the onus on the town to go figure that out instead of planning for it ahead of time. Lisa, am I off base here?
We have a number of things throughout the town where there's certain snow storage that's set aside, and then there are conditions in the agreement, in the approvals that say if there's excess snow, it has to be trucked off. And so it's
Right,
not,
yeah,
Including Eastdale. by the way.
right. No, I am aware of that, but here it appears that there's hardly any room at all there. So it would be like almost every time.
so in this instance, in some ways, you have to rely on the business owner and the people who are running the site. Because if the tenants have nowhere to park and the customers can't park for the restaurant, there will be complaints made. So it's really in the applicant's interest to keep those parking spaces clear so that they have, if there is a snow event that requires them to truck it off, it's in their interest to do it and do it as quickly as possible, because otherwise they have no business. So,
What is the town's remedy? Let's say the snow is not moved off site. What's the town's
So
remedy?
it's site plan violation would be an order to remedy issued. I mean, of course, those things usually last for 30 days. I guess, I don't know that we would, we would have to count on their not having repeated violations. But
so the town would have the ability to issue an order to remedy, but
Right.
also you will, I'm assuming the tenants that are in that building and the restaurant will have something in their lease that obligates them, and they may have more incentive to quickly enforce it too, if the need be, and as a private matter without necessarily having the town involved. But
it's a little bit
either
of an honor
available is,
system. I mean, it's not like there's, the enforcement mechanism is not the strongest. I mean, to be quite honest with you, especially where snow is concerned, because snow tends to melt here within a few days. So, but as Lisa said, we would hope that there's a business interest on the part of the property owner to maintain it.
Right. I mean, I simply foresee a situation where it snows, they can't put it anywhere, and the tenant comes home and there's no spot for it. And then you call, who do you call, the town, or you call whatever, and it could take days for someone to get out there. I don't know, it's just, that's my concern.
Joan?
Just a quick question. For the tenants at 44 Lagrange, how do they access the units? Do they access them from the back of the building?
I don't have the architectural drawings, but yeah, they're accessed closest to the 44 or 42 Lagrange side, so the west side, or between the two buildings, that the access to the apartments is on that side.
To get to the
No.
front to go into the building. Okay,
No.
that was my
No,
question.
this is a much better situation than the 39 Lagrange proposal.
Okay, thanks.
With respect to that.
Is there a some mechanism? I mean, even other than just relying on an order to remedy, to address, I mean, I would like to, approve this project. I think they'll do a good job. I think everything that we've seen. But this is an issue. I think it's got to be addressed somehow. Either an agreement between the owner and the town, or I just don't see it. I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
It's not different, again, than what we've done for Raymond Avenue School, for Eastdale, for other places.
The only difference is this is really an enclosed.
It is a very tight
area.
space. That's correct. Yeah.
I mean, the Raymond Avenue, Eastdale, I mean, they have room to move.
Yeah.
Here you don't.
And yet, I think there was another project in the last year or so where you kind of did a ballpark estimate on the typical amount of snowfall relative to the snow storage area that was being proposed. I don't remember if it was for maybe Raymond Avenue.
No, it was the one behind Rite Aid on Route 9.
Center
What was
Oh,
that one?
Center,
Yeah.
Center Point.
Yes, that was the one.
Center Point, right. I mean, would it be reasonable to kind of do either for you or for their engineer to kind of do a ballpark estimate based on the snow storage available to see if there was some reasonable amount of storage available on site? Or is that going to be too difficult?
I mean, it's been done. It's a really it's a pretty subjective calculation because, you know, the amount of snow, the way that the snow is piled, it can be done. We could certainly come up with something and see what we get. I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
I mean, one of the variables I remember also was that, I think it was in that case, was that or maybe this was another plan, is that snow storage area is a very relative thing trying to measure, because in the event of a lot of snow, you get it back there and you pile up higher. Like in the shopping centers, they can pile it 20 or 30 feet high.
But they have room. In other words, there's a limit to how high you can pile when you have a neighbor that close.
Right. So what the board, in order to move this along, we could have as a condition of approval, a sort of a potential snow agreement if warranted based on the study that Andy does. The problem is what's the trigger and what's the enforcement? You know, if there's half of a parking space is blocked for 8 hours, and, you know, is it by the time, even regardless of whether it's an order to remedy or a private agreement, an agreement between the property owner and the town, by the time you do any enforcement action, it could be spring. There's, you know, it's very difficult in these situations to do that. So, I mean, we could do an analysis and a potential agreement, but I'm not sure that it is really much less cumbersome than the order to remedy that we already have. Not to
Well,
mention it would require town board
My
approval.
guess is that there is I have a friend who was very successful in the business, and I asked him, you know, what's the secret of your success? And he said, I could always think at the table. Unfortunately, I don't have that skill, but my sense is that there is a solution to this. I just can't think of it right now.
What if the applicant, right now, there's a note on the plan that says the applicant will remove if there is an excess of snow. If they put a time limit for that removal, would that help?
That would help.
I think we had a note, I think it may have said 48 hours.
That's standard. We did that for
Yeah.
one Duchess, I'm pretty sure.
And the other thing that Andy made,
40, if I'm living there and I can't park. 48
Welcome to
40
the world of renting.
I mean, 48 hours.
I've driven home from these meetings and had nowhere to park, so maybe they'll hand out shovels.
Yeah, 48 hours does not seem to me to be a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, even the town requires, I think, like, how many hours after the snow is stopped, you have to shovel the sidewalk? But it's not 48 hours, that I know.
Right, and the shape of that parking area with the driveway, I don't even know how a plow can even get in there and do the job. Because there's, I think, 6 spaces, two are for the tenants, and it's a narrow driveway. So I don't even know how you can even get a snow plow in there to do that. I don't own
It's a combination of a snow plow, snow blower. Fortunately, I don't have the a precise answer. I do know that the applicant is very proactive and very accommodating and very, involved with this project. And I'm certain that he would, do what's necessary to remove snow in a timely manner. I'm confident in that. Now we all know that things can change over time, maybe new ownership, but
Not to like throw gas on the fire, but part of the snow storage is over the infiltration trench, correct? So does that adversely impact the effectiveness of that infiltration trench?
Andy, did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. It has that potential. Yes. If there's enough snow piled up on there, that could prevent water from entering the trench.
So does that suggest that another stormwater method would be better? And then you would have that space for additional snow storage?
Yeah, I mean, that's one, yes, that's one way to look at it. Or they could move the infiltration trench.
Is 6 parking spaces the minimum required here?
Well, there's,
We
have 8.
One
and I-
is ADA. So,
They're providing the minimum needed for the 2 uses to be served by this parking lot.
I do believe for the 2 uses, for the residential component, for the 44 Lagrange and 42, we have 1 extra.
Would it be possible
We have 1
reduce
extra spot.
to reduce a parking spot to add for snow storage? I mean,
I think you'd probably want to keep the parking space, but potentially allow a parking space maybe to be used for snow storage if there were an extra. We can certainly have that discussion with Andy. I think you'd want it to be there in the summer and the rest of the time when
Yeah,
it's
that's-
beneficial to have the parking.
that's fine for us, but it might not be fine for the person using that space.
Wouldn't you think an extra space would be?
Extra, is there an extra space here?
There are 8 spaces proposed.
Right.
5 of them are to be designated for use by the mixed use at 44 Lagrange.
Right.
And those are necessary to meet the residential requirements of that property. The other 3 are available for 42 Lagrange, which has 2 residential units requiring 3 parking spaces.
1.5 spaces per.
Right, and one of those is a handicap space, so they're just meeting the minimum as it is now.
How does that work when you have such limited parking and one is a handicap? If you don't have anybody residing in the residential property who's handicapped, then that space is effectively not available to anyone. So you really almost need to have a surplus space, realistically speaking.
Really, why do, we don't require that handicap?
It's a building code.
It's a building code requirement.
yeah, especially with the
The
restaurant.
handicap space is a building code requirement, and the parking count is a zoning code requirement.
It's a handicap, this handicap space is a requirement for the restaurant, correct? Because none of
Well,
the,
that, but even any parking lot that, if, no matter how many spots, if you had 3 spots, you have to have 1 handicap. It's just a building code.
It's like 1 for every 25 or something.
It's 1 per 25.
Up to 25.
I mean, you have visitors, guys. I mean, people come in handicapped to the building, right? So you can't just take that away.
It does occur to me, looking at the plan, that there's additional grass area located not directly adjacent to the parking lot, but where the driveway is going to be removed east of the building, along to one end of the parking lot, and the left end of the parking lot and above the 42 Lagrange building, where the former driveway is going to be removed. There is additional storage there that could be utilized by a snow blower, probably not by a plow.
I think it's something that we let Andy and staff work through. And, the board will allow them to make whatever notes on the plan are required. I mean, it may be something that if there's a snow event of greater than 6 inches, snow has to be removed in 24 hours or something like that. But it's certainly something that I think, once we have a sense from Andy, so roughly, and we understand it's very rough, of what the snow totals are likely to be, then we can make that determination. Staff can do that.
All right, that sounds good. Do I hear a motion?
I move the planning board as an involved agency undertaking an uncoordinated seeker review, determine that the 44 Lagrange Avenue amended special use permit and site plan shared parking with 42 Lagrange Avenue project will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment, and that no environmental impact statement will be required for the reasons set forth in the seeker negative declaration for illicit action dated November 18th, 2021.
Second.
It's been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. 5, 4, and 1 opposed.
Make that.
I'm sorry, 4, 4, and 2 opposed.
So the motion still passes because 4 is the minimum needed.
I move that the planning board adopt a resolution to grant conditional special use permit and site plan approval as amended for the 44 Lagrange Avenue amended special use permit and site plan shared parking with 42 Lagrange Avenue project, subject to the following. Respond to the comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies. Consider responses to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness, inclusive of, but not limited to the following. Items 1 through 9. 9 are the comments raised at the open meeting and planning board meeting.
Second.
It's been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
Okay. 4, 4, and 2 opposed. Passes 4. Thank you. Okay, next up is 8 Tucker Drive. It's adjournment. I move the planning board adjourn the public hearing indefinitely.
Second.
It's been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Arlington Farms Malabar Realty LLC. I move that we adjourn the public hearing to December 16th, 2021.
Second.
It's been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's been moved 6-0. Next up, Stewart Shops, 2245 South Road. I move the planning board adjourn the public hearing to December 16th, 2021.
Second.
Second.
Been seconded. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's been moved 6-0. At this time, I will ask for a motion to allow public comment on any of the other items on tonight's agenda. We ask that you please limit your comments to more than 3 minutes.
No more.
No more than 3 minutes. The planning board will consider any comments made during this portion of the meeting, but will not respond to them during the meeting. Is there anyone on the meeting that would like to speak at this time?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
And your name?
Michelle.
And Michelle, you'd like to speak on the final item remaining on the agenda, the Bragdon subdivision?
No.
The motion
This
is only, yeah, I'm
other
sorry.
business.
This is not a
have to wait.
general, the planning board doesn't allow comments on things that are not on the agenda items. The comments are solely limited to the agenda items. So
Okay, isn't there a section for other business?
no,
Not on the planning board.
not during, the planning board does not do that. It's only on items that are on the agenda.
I thought I saw it on the agenda. It said other business.
Motion to allow public comment on remaining agenda items. Other business at the end is an item that the planning board is able to bring. Members of the planning board may, if they have other business that they'd like to discuss, it's not for a public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay, I thought this board was for us. Who is this board for?
All right.
Just in short, who is this board for?
This is a planning board meeting for the town of
Yeah.
Poughkeepsie, and if it's not an application, if it's not a comment about an application on our agenda, we do not accept public comments on those things.
Correct. This is pursuant to the open meetings law. The meeting is required to be open to the public, meaning that the public has the opportunity to observe. But the public is only required by law to participate on matters that are public hearings and not matters that are simply on the agenda. And so the planning
Okay.
board,
Okay, so to that point, who made these rules?
New York State. Thank you, Michelle.
And who, yes,
Okay, Bragdon subdivision, 10 Conklin Street. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I move to close the public meeting, the motion of public comments. We
Second.
just, thank you, Ahmad. It's been seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
60. Okay, sorry. Yes, Bragdon subdivision, 10 Conklin Street. Hello.
Hello, hi. So this is the first time I'm meeting with you. I'm not sure how much you all know about my project. I don't want to take too much of your time and read my proposal, but I will if it's something that's not necessary.
Sarah, you can assume that the board is familiar with the project. They have reviewed it and they've also reviewed all of the comments that the consultants and the staff have provided. So if you want to give a very brief overview of what you're looking to do, you can do that, but you can assume that the board's familiar with everything that you've submitted.
Okay, great. So yeah, the brief overview is that I've lived on 10 Conklin Street for 15 years and I have 2 outbuildings, which are barns. I'm interested in subdividing the property so that I can reside in the larger of the 2 barns and sell my house in order to be able to do that. This is kind of a dream of mine for a long time. It's a beautiful building. It's falling down and I would like very much to keep it, and the community also would. So I'm trying to do that. There are a few things after having read your comments that I have questions about, and I wrote them down, and I don't know if Kristen emailed them to you, so you might have them on email, but I also have copies. Would you like me to pass out the copies of the things that I'm going to ask you now?
Oh, sure.
It might
That would be
be
great.
easier for
Thank
you
you.
to.
Yeah.
I just want to point out though too, that there are probably 3 or 4 of those items that I know I could address pretty quickly, so.
Easily without going over
So
them.
do you want to
Okay.
wait until we get?
It's up to you. I just.
Well, I just like, we could probably say it really quickly and then I could get clarification on
Sure.
it. I mean, as long as we're all here. So the first thing is kind of a catch-22. Is that one of the ones that you're thinking of?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what happens here. The catch-22 is that the Board of Health has said they need preliminary subdivision approval before I can get your approval and you need his approval. So it's kind of like which comes
Yes,
first.
so traditionally what happens for planning board purposes and review, whether it's site plan or subdivision, we get the project far enough along to when we issue what we call a conditional approval. So there's a set of conditions, but that have to remain to be met, but you don't have to come back and appear before the planning board. It's handled at a staff level.
Okay.
So typically, and Andy, feel free to jump in if I misspeak about any of this, but we'll have that conditional approval. And one of the conditions will ultimately be, okay, you have conditional approval, go get your approval from Dutchess County Department of Health. And that's
Okay.
traditionally how that operates. And Jim Teed would be familiar with that process.
Okay, yeah, because he requires something in writing, so I wasn't quite sure when I got that. So at some point before I see you
Yep.
next.
So
Okay.
we will actually provide you for every appearance before the planning board. You will receive what we call a decision letter after the meeting. Usually, I don't want to hold Amanda or anyone here to that, but it's usually at the latest by the Monday after the meeting. So.
Okay.
But
Great.
you said you'll receive something before your next appearance. That's not the case. What will happen is when you have completed your process before the planning board, then the board will vote as a whole and to grant a conditional approval. At that time, you'll get that decision, whenever that may be, and then you'll be able to take that and proceed with Department of Health to finish what you need to do then.
Okay, so that letter will come after I see you next?
It's a resolution of the board, and it would be a resolution of this board conditionally approving your subdivision. So that
Right.
won't happen until all of the town conditions are met as part of your
Yes.
subdivision. So
Oh, yeah, that's what I understood. I just
Right.
wasn't sure if it happened kind of during a staff or whether it happened in a setting.
it will
like
happen
this.
in a setting like this during a public meeting.
Oh, okay.
I will just add
That's
that
confusing, I think. but-
I will just add that I know you have comments from Mr. Teed at the Health Department, and there's nothing stopping you from moving ahead with addressing those comments, because he will require those comments to be addressed and you can work in parallel in terms of the 2 approvals, so that we can get to a point where the board can recommend a conditional approval and you'll have most of those comments addressed at that time. so that
Okay.
the approval from the health department should come fairly quickly.
Okay, hopefully. Okay, thank you. The next thing I have is this idea of trees and disturbing. So in Andrew Learn's engineering comments, there was a question to identify areas of disturbance, including limits of trees and vegetation clearing. So I have, part of the property is quite vacant, but there are a lot of saplings and underbrush. And then there are some large trees, beautiful trees on my property. Well, my neighbor across the street, most of my neighbors, I have to qualify this, love the idea of restoring this building and want me to realize whatever dreams and know that it's an existing building and I'm not changing the character of the neighborhood, and they're all up for it. But my neighbor across the street is not, what has a bit of a grudge from the lady that had the property before me, and she's kind of using her experience with the woman who built the house to kind of inform her ideas about what I'm doing. So she has a little clouded perception, and she writes in an email to me, "I'd love to see all of your trees to the south of your house go before a possible new owner. And I would think Peter and Susan would also benefit by clear cutting all of the weed trees that have grown rampant over the past decade or two. Your property is slowly, and in our case, rapidly destroyed. One of the most valuable treasures about living in New Hamburg. Views of the river are so special." So I agree with that. The trees have grown. Even if I cut every tree on my property, there would be trees behind those, because these large trees on the Rogers, they're pine trees. Nobody will have the view that they had 20 years ago in New Hamburg. The trees have grown. And so my question here is, the town is kind of saying, don't cut the trees for erosion purposes or for environmental purposes. And my neighbors are saying, cut all your trees down. And I'm open to suggestions. I would, yeah. So there's that to address. And then I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that now, or if we should just wait until there are comments.
Andy, I think.
I can address that. Yeah, so our comment really doesn't have as much to do with the trees as soil disturbance, because the amount of soil disturbance pertains to whether or not a state permit for erosion and sediment control is required. So the amount of soil disturbance is really going to be related to whatever is required for your septic system installation, whatever is required for a new driveway for lot 1, any modifications to the driveway for lot 2, or any additions, if there are any, to the existing buildings. That's really all it has. That's all we're really concerned about.
Yeah.
Is that total area of disturbance of soil. The amount of trees to be cleared is really only pertains to possible restrictions with respect to the time frame, which has to do with protections for Indiana bats and other bat species that are sensitive to certain removal of certain types of trees.
Okay, and it's my understanding that if it's less than an acre of land that will be disturbed, I don't need to have a huge survey done. Is that correct?
That is correct. The 1 acre is the threshold. Yes.
So the total acreage of both lots is 1.56. So I don't imagine disturbing a whole acre of that. I mean, I wouldn't be disturbing half of the property.
It sounds unlikely, but we would need those lines, the actual amount to be determined.
Sure, of course. Okay, and then there's the question of whether I'm going to keep a fence, and I'm not sure which fence. There are 2 fences. There's the one that goes around the property and the one that goes older.
So essentially I think that's getting to my comment. So essentially that just, whatever you decide to keep, the plat just has to demonstrate. So
Okay.
just clearly articulating that when you have that final plat.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then this is, well, could I do number 5 before I do number 4? Number 5 has to do with the driveway options, which I wanted to address now before we designed one, because there are three possibilities as I see it. If you have the survey in front of you, there's a concrete platform that is just to the west of the existing house. You'll see it's just behind a retaining wall. It shows concrete slab to the west of the house.
Yeah,
So if you see
yeah.
that, yeah, then it was the engineer, Mark Day is the engineer I'm using, and he suggested that the driveway go there and it'd be a 2-story driveway. That's one option.
So the answer, I mean, you are free to have this discussion with the board, but what you really are going to need is a highway permit to get from the town. And so that's actually the person you should talk to about what the appropriate location for the driveway is.
Okay.
And Andy can speak to that further as well.
Okay, I just want,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, really, I mean, we need to see where the location is on the plan for the new lot. But the town highway superintendent, Mark Pfeiffer, is the one that will ultimately decide if the location is acceptable. So
Okay.
It's best to reach out to him and his office and get his input early, and then we can just show it on the plan that way.
got it. The only reason I'm really bringing it up to you is that the public hearing is in this venue, and the driveway placement may have something to do with whether the public will like it in one place or another.
So the next time you bring the plan back, you should probably have worked out where that location should be. So it's on the plan.
With all my neighbors, or do I mean,
No.
So you'll want to
just myself.
The
I mean,
best way to,
because I'm
these are valid
trying to
questions.
avoid problems.
These are valid questions. And I think the appropriate way to go about it is actually to locate the driveway in a way that is safe, which is why having the conversation with Mark Pfeiffer is appropriate, but also the highway, the fire department and the highway department, because access is important to the property that you would be potentially living in the future. So once you come back to us, will have worked with you and your engineer to design the appropriate access. Then when your neighbors, I would hope that they would be excited for you, but if there were concerns, you would be able to say, well, I spoke with the highway department. The placement here is necessary because X, Y, Z. Or I've spoken to the fire department, the placement here is necessary because of access needing to be a certain width or at a certain grade, or and that usually is what the way that this would be
how this is
facilitated.
handled. Okay, and the last thing has to do with thank you.
Of course, yeah.
For bearing with me because I'm not familiar with this process, obviously. So appreciate your time. The recreation fee waiver. So this is just a request on my part. What the history of this is that I had purchased a lot, having been told that obtaining an area variance would be easier if I had this triangular piece that jutted into my property. I had acquired that, what turned out to be lot. So then I had 2 lots and I wanted to do a lot line revision, which would have taken less time and effort and money and everything. But I was told that that was not possible. And I, in the interest of not delaying this and of not having further controversy, I just kind of went with the town's recommendation that I merge the lots and then again divide the lots into 2 lots. So in the beginning, there were 2 lots. I merged them. Now I'm making 2 more lots. The number of lots is the same. And if the recreation fee is determined by a lot, then there isn't really a new lot being created. So I'm asking if the town accommodate my desire to please waive the recreation fee.
So I can speak to that. The recreation fee, the imposition of the fee is a 2-part process or 2-board process. It involves the planning board in that the planning board makes a determination that basically when there is a new residential lot or buildable residential lot, where in this instance, your triangle lot actually wasn't buildable in the first instance because it was so tiny. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But so the planning board makes a determination that park land is needed and whether there is room on your site for a park, which obviously there isn't a public park. And then the amount of the recreation fee or any waiver of the recreation fee is a town board decision. Pursuant to the New York State statute, the town board sets the amount of the fee. And so it would be in the town board's purview to waive that fee if they wanted to. So your request for a waiver is appropriately made to the town board and not this board.
Okay. Just as, do you represent the town board as well?
No, Jim Nelson is the attorney for the town board.
Jim
And
Nelson.
he's, in fact, he is the person who made the determination that the triangle lot was not a buildable lot and therefore the lot line revision was not available. So he'll be fully familiar with the rationale behind your request for the waiver.
Yes, I understand. There is a bit of a discrepancy and around whether that small lot, although it doesn't fulfill the bulk requirement to be a buildable lot, that because it was separated, it becomes a lot that you could do something with technically.
Well,
maybe
there's
on
a
some level.
separate legally, and not to bog anybody down, but there's a distinction between what may be a lot and whether a lot is actually a buildable lot,
Mhm.
and which requires it to have enough acreage for septic and things like that. And I think it's pretty clear that the triangle lot would not have been, you wouldn't be able to put a house plus a septic plus a well on that little triangle parcel. So I don't think there would be a dispute that it was a buildable lot, but in any event,
Okay.
it's ultimately Jim's determination that the subdivision was the way to go, reason you're here,
Mhm.
and not a lot line. And
Mhm.
so he'll be able to relay that to the town board if you make your waiver request to them.
Okay. I think that pretty much, oh, one other question about stormwater, which probably would be to Mr. Learn, is that any questions about drainage? In my particular case, there are grates on all the streets that surround me that are, town made. And then there's a stormwater retention tank on Bridge Street also. I'm wondering if those things are enough to qualify for the requirements of proper stormwater runoff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't need to do anything more for stormwater.
It seems it's unlikely. Yeah, I mean,
Uh-huh.
for a small subdivision like this, you're only going to be required to provide erosion controls, construction phase erosion control, silt fence, a tracking pad, permanent stormwater management with ponds and catch basins and pipes. That's
Mhm.
not going to be required in this situation.
Mhm. I'm sure my engineer will know more than I do about this, but I just wanted to have some kind of understanding so that I can encourage my engineer to follow through on certain things where they need to be followed through on. Thank you very much. It's a long night. I appreciate your time.
Oh,
we're
well,
not done
so,
yet.
done?
yeah, we've barely begun, no.
Okay.
So I think it probably would be helpful if I just sort of try to bring us back to
Okay.
the normal
Yep.
procedure. So the application's on for seeker review, waterfront consistency review, and subdivision review. For seeker purposes, this is an unlisted action subject to an uncoordinated review. So there will be no lead agency circulation. As far as waterfront consistency review goes, Ms. Bragdon actually has provided us with a coastal assessment form. It will be included in a submission, our next submission, so the board has a copy of that to review. But just so you know, she is aware of it and it's being handled. There are a number of comments that I've provided, but most of them actually do apply just to cleaning up the plat and what you're hoping to get approved, and working with other departments to get there. But otherwise, the application is on for discussion essentially and a review with the board, and staff is recommending a deferral at this time with comments. And then, of course, Andy has reviewed the project as well, so you might want to go to him.
Andy, do you have any more comments?
Yeah, we have a number of comments, but I think I've touched on all of them. I don't think there's anything that anything else worth mentioning.
Thank you.
And this is, we did recommend that this be an uncoordinated review so that Ms. Bragnon can start her process before the ZBA, because she will need variances because the lots are undersized. So, and it's unclear at this point whether there may be any setback variances. I don't think there will be, but there may be. So that's why we were doing an uncoordinated review for this board, so that she doesn't get held up and she can proceed directly to the ZBA when she's ready.
I have applied for the, I've
Okay.
talked to
Okay.
them.
Peter, do you have any questions?
I'm a little concerned about the, it's really not a concern. I'm sure that the town engineer will look at the septic system, where it's located, the use of infiltrators, the elevations, and all of the above.
Actually, thank you, but it's actually not in our purview, Peter. It's
Board of Health.
actually, it's in the Board of Health.
Thanks.
Ahmad, do you have any questions?
No, I hope she fulfill her dream with the proper plan.
Thank you.
No question.
Rocco?
Good
Joan?
luck.
No, I have no questions, but I mean, generally, I would be in favor of it as long as everything works with the consultants' reviews.
I just have one question. The bulk of the work seems to be on this proposed lot number 1, right? And so if that's the case, that's only 0.872 acres, right, Andy? So then if that was the case, if she's only doing work on that proposed lot number 1, then would she really need a SWIP because it's less than an acre?
It depends on whether or not there's anything that has to be done on lot 1 because it's cumulative. So it has to account for both lots. So if there's anything that has to be done with the existing driveway, or if they're required to do any fill for the reserve area.
Uh-oh, he froze. But I think the bottom line is it's pretty unlikely, like he said earlier, but we just need to have it quantified so we can.
Sure, no problem. There's so much of lot 1 though that's just vacant land
Right.
that I still don't think it will add
Poor
to, it,
Andy
but
will.
we'll definitely get those numbers.
Yeah,
All right,
just so
I
you
think-
can see, he's caught in a really bad spot.
There he
There he
is.
is. All right.
Back.
We got you, Andy. You're all set.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
Sarah. Go ahead.
I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that the planning board defer further application and direct the applicant to respond to comments in writing of the planning board, those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following items 1 through 7. Comments made during that.
Second.
Seconded, called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No other business, right?
Ben's
We're
not
all
here to
set.
terminate.
Is there any other business tonight?
No.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0.
And congratulations, Nicole. Job well done. for your
Thank
first
you.
chair.
Good
Happy
night.
Thanksgiving, everyone.